Dr. Sherwood, are we moving?
Joe Biden, wake up. Joe Biden, wake up. 9/11.
One of the things that I strongly believe is
Joe Biden, wake up.
I should probably go home. I'm tired.
Joe Biden, wake up.
Joe. I'm tired.
Joe Biden,
What's happening?
Joe Biden, 9/11.
What's happening? Joe. Hello, Mr. President. Wake up.
You should have to pay nearly $6,400 more than you would today.
Wake up, wake up, wake up.
That's
Oh my
hilarious.
God. That
It
is
seems
hilarious.
like we missed somebody got lost in the in the first few minutes.
We lose Jimmy.
There he is.
You missed it, Jimmy.
That's from the channel The Export. He's got funny videos there, so go check those out.
So let's go around the room. We'll start with shirts and go clockwise, and everybody can show themselves up.
Oh, well, you can go, but you must go to americashirtsarefirst.com. That's americashirtsarefirst.com. The most based t-shirts on the planet. I'm not a scientist or a physicist, but that's just what the website says. You can go and get yourself exactly. Wake up and wake everybody up around you. Wake them the hell up. Shake them out of their slumber. So grab yourself an awesome base t-shirt. I am wearing, again, one of my t-shirts, and I've had several comments of like, what is that? What? And I get to start a conversation.
The people are the sleeping giants, guys.
Nice.
They are indeed. They are indeed. So wake them up, people. Go buy yourself a shirt.
Hey, what's
Grim,
up?
you're up, bud.
Hey, yeah, I got a YouTube channel. I do a bunch of legal memes and stuff on there. Also, I've been doing a lot more stuff on TikTok. So if you want the like real base stuff, just follow me over there.
Based.
I have to
Bill
look at my
Gates.
description to be sure that I got your TikTok in there.
Oh, yes, and go check out my Rumble channel. I
sounds
have a video there.
I believe I have your
it's
Rumble
worth a
channel.
watch.
Your
stuff
time's
in there.
over, shirts.
And you just reminded me.
No.
Sorry.
Wake up.
Wake up.
Joe Biden.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Go ahead, shirts.
9/11.
Jimmy?
You can follow me here on YouTube at Jimmy YouTube, or you can follow me over on TikTok at the Atlas Pass for some anime clips and a little bit of amateur art, or you can follow me on Twitter where I'm reposting everyone's nonsense, causing trouble generally.
And it seems as though we have a fifth person with us tonight, which is fun. Printer God, how's it going?
The fifth man on the moon. Doing all right. I don't do anything anywhere, so you can't really follow me. You can follow my Twitter, but you won't see anything. But yeah, I'm just printer god.
But he is the god of printers.
He is the printer god.
I am. I hate printers so much, so I became their god so I can punish them.
And
that's
I am
good.
Koolfrogg. You can follow me. There's links down below. Hit up the link tree /Koolfrogg, and you'll find all the links that you can possibly think of. If you want to help me out instantly, you go to buymeacoffee.com /Koolfrogg. That's KOOLFROGG. And anything that you help me out with, right, buymeacoffee.com. If you help me out, eventually I'm going to buy all the shirts that America Shirts has, and I'll turn on my camera and I'll sport the t-shirt on front of the camera so that way you can actually see what he actually, on camera, so help me, help him, help me, help him.
Oh.
Yeah.
You lost me there.
Oh, yeah.
Who's helping who now?
Buy me
You
a
gotta
coffee.
get help you.
He's
we're all
helping
help-
me
it's
to
the
help
curling
him
iron.
to help me.
Yeah, we're
What?
all helping each other.
To
is
help
pretty much what
you.
it's coming down to. Help me, help him, help me, help him.
Too easy.
So
what's on the docket?
we're actually gonna watch the president. Grim, be cool.
Very cool.
President Potato Head.
So let's do this for the second. We'll share this screen.
Wake up. Wake up. We will be leaving shortly.
Yes. If only. Of course, though, you do have to take into consideration the devil that you know perhaps is better than the devil that you don't know at this point.
I started the video early, so that way it would take away the waiting time as we were shilling ourselves. But apparently,
Jimmy fell off the face of the earth again.
Jimmy fell off the face of the earth again.
See, that's another reason the Earth's flat.
I was literally going to say that. Oh my god!
So the fun one.
Hi.
Oh god, that grin.
Usually with
Good afternoon, everyone.
Joe Biden,
Tomorrow will
He can
mark
barely
of
smile. There's so
how
much
1
slow
year since I took off.
he usually
after
talks.
whatever of
It's been a year
surgery
of
that he's had,
challenges,
facial
but
surgery.
it's also been a year of enormous progress. We went from 2 million people being
We can
vaccinated
make him
the
sound
moment
normal
I was sworn
by
in,
speeding him
to
up.
210 million Americans being fully vaccinated today. We created 6 million new jobs, more jobs in 1 year than any
Sounds
time
like
before.
Kennedy.
Unemployment dropped. The unemployment rate dropped to
My
3.9%. Child poverty dropped by nearly 40%.
This is
The biggest
our
drop ever in American
president.
history. New business applications grew by 30%, the biggest increase ever. And for the first time in a long time, this country's working people actually got a raise. People, the bottom 40%, saw their income go up. The most of all those that got a raise.
That doesn't
We cut health
include
insurance premiums
inflation.
for millions of American families, and we just made surprise medical
He's
bills
just counting
illegal
a
in this
cost
country.
of
Just
living
keep
raise.
pumping
You know
the
those bills you
cash.
get that you don't expect of $2,000 to $5,000
That's
from
what
the
we'll
hospital
do.
beyond what you thought you were going to have to owe because the
Get a
consultation
pay
you weren't
raise
told
from
was gonna cost
Congress
that much.
and keep
No
pumping
more.
the cash.
They're now illegal. Thanks to the American Rescue Plan and other actions we've taken, we've
Oh
seen
my
record
God.
job creation, record economic growth in the past year. Now, thanks to the bipartisan infrastructure bill, we're about to make a record investment in rebuilding America to take us to be the #1 best infrastructure in the
Build
world.
back better.
Well, now we're way below that.
Klaus
We'll be
Schwab.
creating better jobs for millions of
Back
people,
by-
modernizing our
excuse me.
roads, our bridges, our highways, our ports, our airports, everything from making clean water, removing lead pipes, that every American can turn on a faucet and drink clean water. Urban and rural and suburban communities.
Ah,
It's going to make affordable high-speed
only
internet
that were the
available
only thing
to
that-
every
the only
American
thing that would
in
fix
urban,
that problem.
rural, and suburban areas. We've never done that before. Now we are. We're in the process of getting that done. Still, for all this
He wants
progress,
internet
I know
in
there's a
every
lot of
house
frustration
so that
and
they can
fatigue in
listen
this
to every
country.
house.
We know
Don't
why.
be fooled.
COVID-19. Omicron has now been challenging us in a way that
Susan,
it's the new
we are not doctors.
While it's
We're
caused
not
for concern,
talking about
Neither is this
COVID.
it's not
bastard.
cause for panic.
Anybody
We're doing
that
everything we can.
everybody
learning
should
and
actually
adapting
go
as fast
see
as we
their
can,
doctors and
preparing
do
for a
what's
future beyond
best
the
for
pandemic.
them.
All I know that after almost 2 years of physical, emotional, and psychological weight of this pandemic and the impact it's had on everyone,
Yeah,
for many
no
of us,
thanks to
it's been too
you,
much to bear. We're in a very different place now, though. We have the
you
tools,
globalist cuck.
vaccines, boosters, masks, tests, pills to save lives and keep businesses and schools open. 75% of adults are fully vaccinated. We've gone from 90 million adults with no shots in arms last summer and down to 35 million with no shots as of today. And we're adding about 9 million more vaccinations each week. We're going to stick with our vaccination efforts because vaccinations work. So get vaccinated, please, and get your booster. Look, we're also increasing
Next
testing.
thing they'll be
Should we have
passing in
done more
Congress
testing
is,
earlier? Yes. But
they'll
we're
be
doing more
putting,
now. We've gone from 0 at-home tests a
those
year ago
jabs
to 375 million tests on the market
into
in
guns.
just this
They'll
month.
make bullets out of them.
If you buy a test at a store, your insurance
Spray
will
'em
reimburse you.
everywhere.
On
It's
top
for
of
your
that,
benefit.
we're making
1
1 billion at-home tests available for you to order and be delivered to your home for free. Just visit
pause it.
covidtest.gov
You didn't pay for that
to
already.
know how to get that free test kit to your home. In addition, there are
Free!
20,000 sites where
Just
you can
as
get
much as
tested
free
in person
college.
for free now. And now we have more treatments that people can for people to keep people out of the hospital than any other point in the pandemic, including life-saving antiviral pills. We purchased 20 million of these new Pfizer pills, more than any country in the world.
My God.
And the bottom line on
Pfizer
COVID-19
pills.
is that we're in a better place than we've been and have been thus far, clearly better than a year ago. We're not going
Pfizer
back.
vaccine.
We're not going back to lockdowns. We're not going back to closing schools. Schools should stay open
Oh,
because the American Rescue Plan,
I want
we
this
provided to states
replayed.
$130
I
billion.
want this replayed later
$130
this
billion
year, 'cause I
to
know
keep our
exactly
students
what's
and
going on.
educators safe and schools open. Funding for ventilation systems in schools, social distancing, hygiene for classrooms and the school buses. In addition, we've added another $10 billion for COVID-19
AKA
tests to be
child
able to be
abuse.
administered at schools. And many states
Psychological
and school districts have
torment
spent
and
this money
torture.
very well. Unfortunately, some haven't.
Well, I
I
mean,
encourage the
in the
states and school
60s, they were
districts
spraying
that
people with
use the
water,
funding to protect
for
our
hygiene.
children
That's
to
why.
keep our schools open. Use it. The COVID-19 is not going to give up
Just
and
get a
accept
power
things.
spray and
It's
just
Hashtag
spray it
not
Democrat
going to go
logic.
away
Yeah.
immediately. But I'm not going to give up and accept things as they are now. Some
We
people
won't
may
talk
call
about
what's
the sugar
happening now the
supplements
new
that
normal.
they gave them in the
I call
40s
it
and
a
50s.
job not yet
Yeah.
finished. It will get better.
How about we
Moving toward a
talk
time when
about the
COVID-19
shots they give him
won't disrupt
before
our
he
daily
goes out
lives.
on a stage?
COVID-19 won't be a crisis, but something to protect against and a threat.
What's
Look,
in those?
We're not there yet, but we will get there.
What? Go back.
Now, the second challenge we're facing are
A
prices.
little Adderall.
COVID-19 has created a lot of
Go
economic
back.
complications, including the challenge we're facing and a threat.
He
Won't
said-
disrupt our now.
He's going too
Most
fast.
states-
No, he can't.
Unfortunately, some haven't. I
Here we
encourage
go.
the states and school districts that use the funding to protect our children and keep our schools open. Use it. The COVID-19 is not going to
Torture
give
our
up and
children.
accept things.
Watch this.
You know, it's not going to go away immediately. But I'm not going to give up and accept things as they are now. Some people may
Of
call
course
what's
not.
happening now the new normal. I call it a job not yet finished. It will get better. We're moving toward a time when COVID-19 won't disrupt our daily lives.
Here we
Where
go.
COVID-19 won't be a crisis, but something to protect against and a threat. Look,
Oh, it's just always going to be a threat. Thanks, bud.
Okay, again, Susan, we're not doctors. We're not talking about or telling anybody what to do, how to do it, or when to do it. People should actually see their doctors and do what's best for them.
we're not there yet,
Yeah.
but we will get there. Now, the
Yes.
second challenge we're facing
One day.
are prices. COVID-19
When
has
we
created
get
a
to the
lot of
Great
economic
Reset.
complications, including rapid price increases
Special
across
day
the world
when we
economy.
Push forward.
People
Agenda
see it at the gas pump, the
21.
grocery stores, and elsewhere. So here's what we're going to do. A critical job in making sure that the
Now Agenda
elevated
20.
prices
You can
don't
go
become
up to like
entrenched
1.25. That
rests
might
with
be
the
better.
federal
Say what?
1.25 might be better.
Yeah.
Reserve,
Yeah, 1.5 is just a
which
little
has a
fast.
dual mandate: full employment and stable prices. The Federal Reserve provided extraordinary support during the crisis for the previous year and a half. Given the strength of our economy and the pace of recent price increases, it's appropriate, as the federal chairman, Chairman Powell, the Fed Chairman Powell has indicated, to recalibrate the support that is now necessary. I respect the Fed's independence, and I've nominated 5 superb individuals to
respect the
serve on the
Feds.
Federal Board of Governors
Respect
men and women
their independence.
from a variety of
It's
ideological
chilling
perspectives.
for the
They're
freaking
eminently
Federal Reserve
qualified,
and all their
historically
people.
diverse,
Oh,
and have
hell.
earned bipartisan praise. And I call on the United States
This
Senate to
guy's not
confirm
bought
them
and
without
paid
any
for
further
at all.
delay. And here at the White House, and for my friends in Congress, the best thing to tackle high prices is a more productive economy with greater capacity to deliver goods and services to the American people. And a growing economy where folks have more choices and more small businesses compete and where more goods can get to market faster and cheaper.
Which is
I've
why
laid
we
out a
made them
three-part
all
plan to
shut
do
down
just
for
that.
like a year and a
First,
half.
fix the supply chain.
So that way they go out of
COVID-19 has had a
business.
global impact on the economy. When a factory shuts
No
down in
shit.
one part of the world, shipments to shops and homes and businesses all over the world are disrupted. COVID-19 has
Thanks to
compounded
rules
that
and
many times over.
regulations.
A couple of months
Can't
ago,
dock
in this very room, we
freaking
heard
ships.
dire warnings about how the supply chain problems could create a real crisis around the holidays. So we acted. We brought together business and labor, and that much predicted crisis did not occur. 99% of the packages were delivered on time, and shelves were stocked. And notwithstanding the recent storms that have impacted many parts of our country, the share of goods
The sign
in stock
language
in
is
stores
hilarious
is
at a
89% now,
faster speed.
which has barely changed from the 91% before the pandemic. I often see empty shelves being shown on television. 89% are full, which is only a few points below what it was before the pandemic. But our work's
Sure
not
they
done.
are.
My infrastructure law will supercharge our
Can't
effort
even buy
upgrading everything
freaking
from
dog
roads and
food.
bridges
But what the
to
hell?
ports and airports, railways and transit to make the economy move faster and reduce prices for families.
Empty
Second
shell.
thing, my Build Back Better plan will address the biggest cost of working families face every day. No other plan will do more to lower the cost for American families. It cuts the cost for childcare. Many families, including the people sitting in this room, if they have children and they're working full time, many families pay up to $14,000 a year for
Your
childcare in
Build
big
Back
cities,
Better
less than
plan.
that in smaller ones. My plan cuts that in half.
$14,000
That
a
will
year
not
for
only be a game
childcare.
changer for
What
so many
the
families'
fuck?
budgets, but it will mean so much for the nearly 2 million women who've left the workforce during the pandemic because of things like childcare. My Build Back Better plan cuts the price of prescription drugs. So insulin, that today costs some people as much as $1,000 a month.
Do we really want to go into insulin? Because, you know, I believe there's somebody that actually did fix the insulin issue during their 4 years of being in office, and that was taken away.
Will cost no more than $35 a month. It cuts the cost of elder care. It lowers energy costs. And it will do all this without raising a single penny in taxes on people making under $400,000 a year or raising the deficit. In fact, my plan cuts the deficit and boosts the economy.
It's always what they say. Pause this for just a second.
That's why
what this bastard and all the rest of these bastards and
I mean, you can go back to George Bush with his no new taxes, and you know, it's all the same thing.
Well, yes, but the particular statistic of it's only those that are making underneath $400,000 a year. Well, okay, just as an example, someone who's running a small business may accumulate $400,000, but they might not actually have that in their back pocket because it has to go back into the business. They have to pay their workers. They have to do this. They have to do that. And all the rest of their shit that they have to do because they're running a business. And then, look, you've only got like what, $90,000 or something, maybe $100,000 or whatever. Then you got to pay for a house, then your kids' stuff and everything else. And then, look, then we got taxes after that. You accumulated $400,000 through your business. Sorry, you got to pay. Really? That's just the stupid argument that they make all the time because, those rich and powerful people. You mean like those people on Main Street? You mean like the person that's just trying to start up a small business? You mean that person that, I don't know, has a freaking shack set up someplace that makes money? It's like, yeah, those people, they're all getting taxed. You're getting taxed. We're all getting freaking taxed out our ass. That's what this is. Anyway, and of course, they always don't actually go by that statistic. They don't actually go by that in all the freaking rules as well. Even I mean, people lower than that accumulate $400,000 still have to pay.
17 Nobel Prize winners for economics say it will ease long-term inflationary pressure. The bottom line: if price increases are what you're worried about, the best answer is my Build Back Better plan. Third thing we're going to do: promote competition. Look, in too many industries, a handful of giant companies.
Holy hell. Promote competition? You mean how you lock down every freaking small business and then the only businesses you could go to is mega corporations and Amazon and all the rest of these places? You mean like that competition?
Yeah, that competition.
You mean like Facebook buying up every freaking patent that anybody comes up with that's an app or whatever, and then they just like hoard it all? And sorry, you're left with shit. Sorry. I mean, is that the type of thing we're talking about? The Facebook that Psaki sits there and says that, we contact Facebook. Facebook contacts us. We have conversations about, misinformation of various things and this, and we need to crack down on this thing. And, we need to crack down on those people who are using hate speech and whatever, and we talk to Facebook. You mean that Facebook?
Yep, that one.
We're all about competition here, though, ladies and gentlemen, with the Joe Biden administration. We are all about competition. The Democrat Party and their globalist hacks, and they're also in the Republican Party as well. But, all those people, yes, we're all for competition here. We love competition, which is why we do the things we do.
Anybody else have anything they want to say?
It's just par for the course, man. Like, these guys have always been hypocrites. It's just more of the same.
Grim's just going to sit in silence.
I'm editing some video right now. Sorry.
There you go.
I had to go back to sleep because. Yeah.
I play Mario Kart.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah, well, think about Mario Kart, but it's Mark Zuckerberg with the bullet bill the whole race. That's what it is.
This isn't a new issue. It's not been the reason we've had high inflation today. It's not the only reason. It's been happening for a decade. But over time, it has reduced competition, squeezed out small businesses and farmers, ranchers, and increased the price for consumers. We end up with an industry like the meat processing industry, where four big companies dominate the market. Pay ranchers less for their cattle they grow, charge consumers more for beef, hamburger meat, whatever they're buying. Prices are up. Look, I'm a capitalist, but capitalism.
Oh my God. Oh my God. We're going to blame the meat
You are not a
people.
capitalist, Biden.
He gets into what he actually is later.
Without competition is not capitalism; it's exploitation. So I signed
Yes,
an executive order.
the people
tackling
who
unfair
have
competition in our economy.
ranches,
We're going
they're
to continue to
evil
enforce
people,
it,
except Bill
along
Gates.
with
He's
working with
great
Congress where we can. I'll
because he
close
gave
with
me
this.
money.
We have faced some of the
Allegedly.
biggest challenges that we.
Is completely made up of that.
I mean, I don't know, maybe they don't want to hear that.
We've ever faced in this country these past few years. Challenges to our public health, challenges to our economy. But we're getting through it. And not only are we getting through it, we're laying the foundation for a future where America wins the 21st century by creating jobs at a record pace. Now we need to get inflation under control. We have developed an extraordinarily effective booster shots and antiviral pills. Now we need to finish the job to get COVID-19 under control. I've long said it's never been a good bet to bet against the American people or America. I believe that more than ever today. We've seen the grit and determination of the American people this past year. But the best days of this country are still ahead
Yeah,
of
to
us,
not
not
go
behind
along
us.
with your freaking
I'm happy to
mandate
take
bullshit.
questions. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. President. I know some of my colleagues will get into some specific issues, but I wanted to zoom out.
Okay, we gotta slow it down.
You got freaking Ben Shapiro over
We
here
can
asking
actually
questions.
do the question.
Thank you, Mr. President. I know some of my colleagues will get into some specific issues, but I wanted to zoom out on your first year in office. Inflation is up. Your signature domestic legislation is stalled in Congress. In a few hours from now, the Senate, an effort in the Senate to deal with voting rights
And you got really pissed off about it
legislation
the
is going
other
to
day.
fail. COVID-19
Oh, he
is
gets
still
pissed
taking the
again.
lives of 1,500 Americans every day, and the nation's divisions are just as raw as they were a year ago. Did you overpromise to the American public what you could achieve in your first year in office, and how do you plan to course correct going forward?
No, he
Why are you such an
undersold.
optimist? Look, I didn't overpromise, but I have probably
Yeah, you didn't.
outperformed what anybody thought would happen. The fact of the matter is that
You didn't tell
we're
us
in a
everything.
situation where
Of course, some of us knew, but
we have made enormous progress. You mentioned the number of deaths from COVID. Well, it was 3 times that.
At first,
Not
we had
long ago.
performance issues, but then I started Viagra.
Coming down. Everything's changing. It's getting better. Look, I didn't overpromise, but I think if you take a look at what we've been able to do, you'd have to acknowledge we made enormous progress. But one of the things that I think is something that, one thing I haven't been able to do so far is get my Republican friends to get in the game of making things better.
oh, you mean those friends that you're
For
trying
example,
to
I was
criminalize?
reading the other day,
for being
and I
Republican?
wrote the quote down so I don't misquote him. A quote from Senator Sununu when he decided that he wasn't going, Governor Sununu, when he decided he wasn't going to run for the Senate in New Hampshire. Here's what he said. They were all,
like he's
for the
pandering
most
to the
part,
right
they were
right
all,
now?
for the most part, content with the speed at which they weren't doing.
Yeah, he pretty much does the whole time, it seems. Like he's trying really hard to make it seem like we're not as divided as we really are.
Yeah,
anything.
he's trying to seem centrist.
It was very clear that we just had to hold the line for 2 years. Okay, so I'm just going to be a roadblock for the next 2 years? That's not what I do, Sununu said.
Why
He went on to say
roadblocks
it
now?
bothered me that they were okay with that. Then he goes on to say, I said, okay, so we're not going to get stuff done if we win the White House back, Why didn't we do anything in 2017 and 2018? And then he said, how the Republicans Sununu spoke to answer the challenge? He said, crickets, yeah, crickets. They had no answer. I did not anticipate that there'd be such a stalwart effort to make sure.
Why is he
that the
looking
most
at something
important thing
from
was
for a question?
that President Biden didn't get anything done.
Just to answer them.
Think about this. What are Republicans for? What are they for? Name me one thing they're for.
Oh my
And
God.
so The problem here is that I
He's
think what's
using
happened
the
is what I
argument that
have to
everybody
do.
uses against the Democrats back at the Republicans. This is like next level gaslighting.
Mm-hmm.
And the change in tactic, if you will.
Well, it must be
I've
expensive.
Of course, he
made
doesn't know
clear
what the
to
hell that
the
is.
roof
He's
right
just
now.
reading off a teleprompter at a piece of paper. He doesn't know what the hell's going on. He just wants his oatmeal afterwards.
What'd you say, Graham?
He's going to be gaslighting people. That gets a little expensive, especially with his prices right now.
Yeah, right.
American people what we are for. We passed a lot. We passed a lot of things.
A little
that
bit
people
of a
don't even
delay
understand
there
what's
on a
all
couple
that's in
of
it,
them, but
understand
that's all right.
Remember when we
I'm just
passed
as
the
delayed as he
Affordable
is.
Care Act?
Joe is.
And everybody thought that, it really was getting pummeled and beaten. And it wasn't until after we're out of office in that next campaign, when that off-year campaign, and I went into I wasn't in office anymore. We went in a whole bunch of districts campaigning for Democrats and Republican districts who said they wanted to do away with health care, with Obamacare. And I started pointing out that if you did that, pre-existing conditions would no longer be covered. And they said, huh? We didn't know that. We didn't know that. And guess what? We won over 38 seats because we had explained to the people exactly what, in fact, had passed. Now, one of the things that I remember saying, and I'll end this, I remember saying to President Obama when he passed the Affordable Care Act, I said, you ought to take a victory lap. And he said, there's so many things going on, we don't have time to take a victory lap. As a consequence, no one knew what the detail of the legislation was. They don't know a lot of the detail of what we pass. So the difference is, I'm going to be out on the road a lot, making the case around the country with my colleagues who are up for re-election and others, making the case of what we did do and what we want to do, what we need to do. And so I don't think I've overpromised at all, and I'm going to stay on this track. One of the things that I remember, and I'll end this with, I was talking with, Jim Clyburn, who was
No, we don't know.
great help to me in the campaign in South Carolina. And Jim said, and when he endorsed me, and there was a clip on television in the last couple of days of Jim, and it said that we
Jim's
want to
a
make
dumbass.
things accessible and affordable for all Americans. That's healthcare. That's education. That's prescription drugs. That's making sure you have access to all the things that everybody else has. We can afford to do that. We can't afford not
All
to do
the things
Stop
that everybody else
answering the
is
question.
for.
Here I come. This is going to be about what are you
Yeah.
for? What are you for?
He said he's going to stop a
And
couple
lay out
times
what
now.
we're for. Mary Bruce, ABC.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Of course, reading off the list of
You mentioned your
selected
Republican colleagues,
reporters,
but right
of
now
course.
your top two legislative
That's
priorities.
totally
your
not
social
obvious. He's just
He
literally
does
read it
go
off.
free after asking so many questions or whatever, because then he actually is just like, now that we've gone for an hour and a half, we're going to actually go off script, and we'll try answering a couple questions that way. And then
Off script.
that's when Peter Ducey finally gets a question.
spending package and voting rights legislation are stalled, blocked by your own party
they have a
after months
freaking
of
stage set
negotiation.
up for
You are
him.
only
They have
guaranteed control of
scripts.
Washington for one more
They have
year before the
lists of
midterms.
reporters.
Do you need to be more realistic
knows
and scale
exactly
down these
what's going on at
priorities
all
in
times.
order to get something
But
passed?
that's just obvious based on
No.
that, right?
I don't think so. When you say more realistic, I
See,
think
he
it's
even agrees,
extremely
right?
realistic
Exactly.
to say to
Sarcasm.
people, because let me back up. You all
Don't back up too much,
really
you'll fall
know
over.
the politics of this country and your networks and others. You spend a lot of time, which I'm glad you do,
Fall over going up the
polling
stairs
this data,
too. So.
determining what the American people's attitudes are, et cetera. The American people overwhelmingly agree with me on prescription drugs. They overwhelmingly agree with me on the cost of education. They overwhelmingly agree with me on early education. They overwhelmingly go on the list on child
Really? We do.
And so we just have to make the case of what we're for and what the other team's not for. Look,
So now there's separation because he just said the other team's not for.
we knew all along that a lot of this was going to be an uphill fight. And one of the ways to do this is to make sure we make the contrast as clear as we can. And one of the things that I think is we're going to have to do is just make the case. I don't think there's anything unrealistic about what we're asking. I'm not asking for castles in the sky. I'm asking for practical things the American people have been asking for a long time.
Oh my God.
A long time. And I think we can get it done.
You're not going to scale down any of these priorities. But so far, that strategy isn't working. You haven't been able to get some of these big legislative ticket items
two
done.
real big ones done, bigger than any president has ever gotten in the first year.
But currently, Mr. President, your spending package, voting rights legislation, they're not going anywhere. So
that's true.
Is there anything that you are confident you can get signed into law before the midterm elections?
No, because the Senate won't allow it. The Senate actually took away both. They voted down both the filibuster and the whatever NASA plan.
Yes, I'm confident we can get pieces, big chunks of the Build Back Better law signed into law. And I'm confident that we can take the case to the American people that the people they should be voting for, who are going to oversee whether the elections in fact are legit or not, should not be those who are being put up by the Republicans to determine that they're going to be able to change the outcome of the election. So whether or not we can actually get an election, and by the way, I haven't given up. We haven't finished the vote yet.
So he can talk about that, but no one else can.
Do you need to hear that, Grim? You said what?
No.
Okay.
Who gets
I totally don't believe in monopolies here, ladies and gentlemen.
Just being sure.
It's just Bill Gates can talk about the jabbies and about, well, we need new ones, because these don't really, work like we wanted. And then, Joe Biden here, he can talk about, like fortification of certain electoral things. But hey, we don't believe in monopolies here. We're totally, we're totally.
Susan,
we love
by
you.
the way, we're not refuting the fact that Joe Biden is our president.
On what's going on the
he is the most legit potato
voting rights, the John Lewis bill and others. But so look, this is. I've been engaged a long time in public policy, and I don't know many things that have been done in one fell swoop.
Yeah, we know you've been there for a long time.
The most important thing to do
long ass time
is try to inform, not educate, inform the public.
He's now been in the government for 50 years.
What's at stake?
He said, did you hear what he said though? He said, I'm not going to educate the public, right? Like, I'm not going to help you understand anything. I'm just going to inform you, and then you're going to do what the hell I ask. I mean, that's kind of what...
The plagiarist in charge is going to educate us.
In stark terms. And let them make
he's going
judgments.
To inform.
Let them know who's for them and who's against them. Who's there and who's not there.
Who's against them?
And that's what I'm going to be spending my time doing.
Who's for them? Who's against them? Yeah.
You mentioned Republicans and reaching out to them. Some Republicans may be open to major changes on voting rights, for instance, like Mitt Romney. He says he never even received a phone call from this White House. Why not?
I like Mitt Romney.
Because you're not here half the damn time.
And one of the things that we're doing, I was trying to make sure we got everybody on the same page in my party on this score. And I didn't call many Republicans at all. The fact is that I do think that Mitt is a serious guy. I think we can get things done. I think I predict to you they'll get something done on the electoral reform side of this. But rather than judge
where we centralize control of all of those things in the federal government.
I'm going to continue to make the case
because that's totally not unconstitutional
to not turn the electoral process over to political persons
vote this way or else
deliberately to change the outcome of elections.
He's
Allison
concerned
Harris.
about all of these pushes at the local level to try to make sure that people at the local level can control how their elections go and how they count things and how they do things and electing, I don't know, like their local people that work in their courthouse, for crying out loud. Like, oh my God, the federal government needs to do something about this. Holy hell.
Thank
We
you,
just
Mr.
can't
President.
allow that
Speaking
to
of voting
happen.
rights legislation, if this
God.
isn't passed, do you still believe the upcoming election will be fairly
Federalism?
conducted and its
No,
results will be
that's
legitimate?
dead, and we'll kill
Well,
it.
it
if it's
all
not.
depends on whether or not we're able to
That's all I know.
make the case to the American people that some of this is being set up to try to alter the outcome of the election. And it's one thing, look, maybe I'm just being too much of an optimist. Remember how we thought not that many people were going to show up to vote in the middle of a pandemic? We had the highest voter turnout in the history of the United States of America. Well, I think
Again,
if in
the most
fact,
legitimate
no matter how
potato
hard they make
ever.
it for minorities to vote, I think you're going to see them willing to stand in line. And
Yeah, especially when they're
defy
being
the
shut out of
attempt to
society
keep
at
them from being
large
able-
because they refuse to take
I think
Bill
you're going to
Gates'
see the
sabbies,
people who
but
try
what
to
the
keep
hell?
from being able to show up, showing up and making the
PayPals,
sacrifices it needs
please.
to make in order to change the law back to what it should be. But it's going to be difficult. I make no bones about that. It's going to be difficult. But we're not there yet.
But we love
run out of
ourselves some
options
colored
yet.
individuals,
We'll
right,
see
Joe?
how this
We love ourselves some
And
of
on
those.
Omicron and education, teachers
Especially
are
when
in
they rub
revolt
your
in
hair
some- in
legs,
revolt
right?
in so many places. Parents are at odds over closing schools and remote learning.
And they kiss
you
your,
say we're not going to
whatever.
go back to closing schools. You said that just moments
Oh wait,
ago.
no, that's his grandson.
Yet
Sorry,
they're
what the
closing
hell?
in some areas. What do
Or
you
his
say to those
great-grandson. Oh,
teachers
God.
and principals and parents about
Or
school
no, is it a
closings?
grandson? Anyway.
And what can your administration do to help make up for learning loss for students?
First of all, I'd put in perspective the question you asked. Very few schools are closing. Over 95% are still open.
God.
So
Can you
all
like
phrase the
can you like
questions when
rewind
people- I
that
don't
to
think
like
it's
right where
deliberate
he
on your part.
leans
But
down
you
to the
phrased
mic?
question of anybody
Have I
watches
ever
this
seen
on
him move
television.
that fast
My
before?
God, there must be.
I mean, my God, it was just like
Go back a few more so you can watch the lean. He does it a couple times
I
for
need
us,
an
and he
instant
like
replay
actually
of this.
whispers. He does his weird things that he does.
Very few schools are closing.
Gotta
Over
clip that and put all the
95%
schools that are
still open.
actually closed.
So you all phrase the questions when people. I don't think it's deliberate on your part.
That's so much work.
You phrase the
95%
question when
are still
anybody watches
open.
this on television. My God, there must be all those schools must be closing. What are we going to do? 95% are still open. Number one. Number two.
In spite of the
The
Democrats.
idea that parents
True.
don't think it's important for their children to be in school.
yeah, go to Chicago.
And teachers know it as well. That's why we made sure that we had the ability to provide the funding through the Recovery Act, through the act that the first act we passed, to be able to make sure schools were able to be safe. So we have new ventilation systems available for them. We have the way they scrub down
Yeah.
laboratories.
In
and-
Oregon,
and,
the,
I mean,
the new ventilation
laboratories
system
kids
is
go
they just take their kids and leave them outside.
Yeah.
That's
That's exactly what
welcome
they've been
to
doing. They've
ventilation.
been leaving the kids outside in below freezing weather. It's
That's
very
going to help
good.
their immune systems.
Yeah, suppress their immune system and say, okay, now you can't stand next to each other.
go to,
It's literally
to the bathroom,
Saying, well,
cafeterias,
the kids better get shots so you're
buses,
And then
gonna
put a
etc.
petri dish over
All
your
that money's
freaking
there.
face, a
Right.
face
Billions
diaper.
of dollars made available. It's
Wear
there.
it all damn day.
Not every
Not
school
allowed to take
district
it off,
has
you get
used it
shot.
as well as it
Allegedly.
should be used, but
Because they want to normalize it.
it's there.
Yes.
And so, in addition to that, there is now another $10 billion
Normalize
for
psychological
testing of
abuse.
students in the schools. So I think as time goes on, it's much more likely you're going to see that number go back up from 95%, back up to 98, 99%. But the outfit, the individuals of the district that says we're not going to be open is always going to get, and I'm not being critical of any of you, it's always going to get front page. It's always going to be the top of the news.
Oh,
Let's
yes,
put it
please
in
don't be
perspective.
critical of
95, as high as 98%
because,
of
you know,
the
you're all
schools
in bed with
America
each other,
are
so, you know.
open, functioning, and capable of doing the job.
That leaned back there. Damn,
Um,
that was.
How about Jen
I'm
Epstein?
impressed.
Mr. President. Thank you.
Your top foreign policy advisors have warned that Russia is now ready to attack Ukraine, but there's still little unity among European allies about what a package of sanctions against Moscow
can you
would
pause
look
this,
like.
Koolfrogg, just 1
If the
second?
U.S. and
So you know what she's talking about here? There was a press conference that Psaki gave, and she said that Russia is planning on doing. This is a quote from her. She said Russia is planning on doing, and this is again from their intelligence assets or whatever that they claim, right? And you trust them. I mean, you can, but she claims that Russia is planning on doing a quote unquote false flag event to try and, make it so that, they can go to war with Ukraine. They have operatives that are basically going to, do things against Russian military installments around that area. And then it's going to look like, oh my God, Ukraine is doing something. So now we need to invade the Ukraine, right? But hey, if you go off and say like Vietnam was started by something that maybe shouldn't have been started by you're crazy, you're insane, you're a freak, no war has ever been started by false flag. But hey, Jen Psaki said Russia can do it all day long though, but what the hell? We're all freaking crazy, except her, except them. It's fine when they claim that Russia can do it. It's fine.
Warned
Doesn't
that
exist
Russia
anywhere
is
else.
now ready to attack Ukraine.
But yeah, that's
but
what
there's
they're
still
talking
little
about.
unity among European allies about what a package of sanctions against Moscow would look like. If the U.S. and NATO aren't willing to put troops on the line to defend Ukraine, American allies can't agree on a sanctions package. Hasn't the U.S. and the West lost nearly all of its leverage over Vladimir Putin? And given how ineffective sanctions have been in deterring Putin in the past, why should the threat of new sanctions give him pause?
Well, because he's never seen sanctions like the ones I promised will be imposed if he moves, number one. Number two, we're in a situation where Vladimir Putin is about to, we've had very frank discussions, Vladimir Putin and I, and the idea that NATO is not going to be united, I don't buy. I've spoken to every major NATO leader. We've had the NATO-Russian summit. We've had the OSCE has met, etc.
What's up, Jimmy?
Biden's just like, oh yeah, Putin's my bro.
Yeah.
And so I think what you're going to see is that Russia will be held accountable if it invades. And it depends on what it does. It's one thing if it's a minor incursion and then we end up having a fight about what to do and not do, et cetera. But if they actually do what they're capable of doing with the force amassed on the border,
that right
it is going to be a disaster.
That's a problem. It depends on what if it invades. It depends on what it does. If it's a minor invasion, it's no big deal. He minorly invaded my country with another country. He minorly, violated our sovereignty. If they jump in and drop a nuke, then we'll do something. But if they jump in and
being that it's the Ukraine, you'd think that Joe Biden would be a little bit more concerned about it being that
as if literally anything they do will not be minor. Ukraine will let it be minor. Like Ukraine is going to fight back tooth and nail for everything right now. So no matter what, there is no situation on the planet where Ukraine is letting it be a minor incursion. Just saying.
For Russia, if they further invade Ukraine, and that our allies and partners are ready to impose severe cost and significant harm on Russia and the Russian economy. And, we're going to fortify our NATO allies, I told them, on the eastern flank, if in fact he does invade. I've already shipped over $600 million worth of sophisticated equipment, defensive equipment, to the Ukrainians. The cost of going into Ukraine in terms of physical loss of life for the Russians, they'll be able to prevail over time, but it's going to be heavy. It's going to be real. It's going to be consequential. In addition to that, Putin has
they'll be able to
prevail over time.
We already
de-escalation.
If they throw enough bodies at
it. They will prevail over time. We already lost with Joe Biden in his mind. They will prevail.
Biden. What
Dude,
the
But I
hell?
think the
That's some
thing,
pussy shit. Like, what
Again,
the
Susan,
hell?
we're
I'm
not
glad it's
refuting that he's
ridiculous.
our president. He is the president of the United States of America.
We
We're
Well,
just
the
already knew
impression is
critiquing
if
his
they're consistent, they're gonna beat us. There's nothing else we can really do.
right.
Fuck you, dude.
I think
I'm
the
done
thing
with this
here
guy.
though is, I think the thing here though is like, okay, so he says, we'll have a response, and it depends on what this, how much Putin decides to do. What does that look like exactly? I mean, he's just saying it so flamboyantly. It's like, well, what exactly does that look like? I mean, we have freaking congressmen sitting around talking about, you know what? Maybe we should just tactical nuke everything around there. Just like drop a couple tactical nukes around. Why don't we just do that? It's just for fun, right? This is. People
For
in the United
funsies,
States are
yeah,
literally. We have the
absolutely.
president of the United States here, literally threatening war with Russia just ad nauseum because of Russia on the border of Ukraine, and Russia and Ukraine are having a dispute. Ukraine can have whoever they want, I guess, in the fight if they so choose. But I think the big thing here is like, wait. We're going to be dragged into a war with Russia if Russia decides to take like one extra like half mile of land or something. I mean, like, what exactly are you saying here?
To be real, it's going to be consequential. In addition to that, Putin has a stark choice. He either de-escalation or diplomacy, a confrontation of the consequences. And look, I think you're going to see, for example, everybody talks about how Russia has control over the energy supply that Europe absorbs. Well, guess what?
Thanks to you.
That money that they earn from that makes about 45% of their economy. I don't see that as a one-way street. They go ahead and cut it off. It's like my mother used to say, you're biting your nose off to spite your face. It's not like they have all these wonderful choices out there. I spoke with the Prime Minister of Finland, and, we're talking about concern on the part of Finland and Sweden about what Russia is doing. The last thing that Russia needs is Finland deciding to change its status. They didn't say they're going to do that, but they're talking about what, in fact, is going on and how outrageous Russia is being. We're finding ourselves in a position where I believe you'll see that there'll be severe
Caught
economic
himself
consequences.
leaking
For
sensitive
example,
conversations.
anything that involves dollar denominations, if they make a...
Yeah, he did. I'm going to play that again because that was kind of interesting.
I like he didn't cross the line there, but he backpedaled hard.
They didn't say they're going to do that, but they're talking about what, in fact, is going on and how outrageous Russia is being. What we're talking about is what Russia is doing. The last thing that Russia needs is Finland deciding to change its status. They didn't say they're going to do that, but
they didn't say that
The
they were
last
going to do
thing
that.
Russia needs is Finland to join NATO.
But you just pointed them out.
He just said that they were talking about it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. He just
they're talking about what, in fact, is going on
legitimate
and how outrageous
potato
Russia is being.
history.
I want a potato right now. I'm not gonna lie.
We're finding ourselves in a position where I believe you'll see that there'll be severe economic consequences. For example, anything that involves dollar denominations, if they invade, they're going to pay. They're not going. Their banks will not be able to deal in dollars. So there's a lot's going to happen. But here's the thing: my conversation with Putin, and we've been, how can we say it? We have no problem understanding one another. He has no problem understanding me, nor me him. And the direct conversations.
Oftentimes we have trouble understanding you, and you have a hard time understanding yourself and where you're going in a conversation. So,
even the sign language girl doesn't believe him right now. Look at her face.
Yeah.
You've occupied before other countries, but the price has been extremely high. How long? You can go in and, over time, at great loss and economic loss, go in and occupy Ukraine. But how many years? 1, 3, 5, 10? what is that going to take? What toll does that
Not
take?
2 or 4.
It's real. It's consequential. So this is not all just a cakewalk for Russia. Militarily, they have overwhelming superiority.
Did somebody say cake?
As it relates to Ukraine.
Crazy thing is,
But
I
they'll
speak
pay
sign
a
language
stiff
fluently, and
price.
she's watering down what he's saying by like a good 80%. It's actually kind of funny.
It's good that there's somebody that actually knows what she's actually saying. I like it.
Yeah, that's interesting.
She's basically like going on the super low, like I'm talking like second grade level version of what he's saying.
It just basically proves that all these sign language people are just fake anyway.
You know,
they're just like throwing their
there was
hands
a thing
around.
at the very
Hey,
beginning of
Jimmy,
his
check your
presidency.
Twitter or your TikTok.
There was a thing that was at the very beginning of his presidency where there were like 3 or 4 different sign language interpreters that had come out for Saki or whatever that they actually got rid of before they found this girl, because they were saying that they were actually not saying what they were actually saying. They were adding words.
Near term, medium term, and long term if they do it. I'm sorry. Okay.
That TikTok was gold.
David Sanger, New York Times.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to follow up on your answer there about Russia and Ukraine. When you were in Geneva in June, you said to us about President Putin, I think the last thing he wants now is a Cold War. Now, since then, of course, you've seen him gather these troops, 100,000 troops around Ukraine. Your Secretary of State said today he thought he could invade it at any moment. You've seen the cyber attacks. And you've seen the demand that he have a sphere of influence in which you would withdraw all American troops and nuclear weapons from what used to be the Soviet bloc. So I'm wondering if you still think that the last thing he wants is a Cold War. And has your view of him changed in the past few months? And if it has, and he does invade, would your posture be to really move back to the kind of containment policy that you saw so often when you were still in the Senate?
The answer is
Okay.
that
Pause this for just a second. What he just brought up is very important in this whole thing, which is that Russia has said their concern and the reason why they are very agitated now is that they have had enough of the United States basically breaking their treaty with them, which is that they weren't going to put nukes and other like really heavy gear and different things of that nature militarily right along Russia's border and inside of the former Soviet states. Now, NATO and the United States have very well and have not followed that at all. And so this has kind of come to a boiling point in Russia itself. In fact, the Russian people themselves, if you pay attention to anything, which I mean, it's not like I pay huge attention to it, but like I've kind of glanced at it and stuff. And if you actually look at it, like the reporting and things that come out of Russia and the different people that talk about things like what's going on from the Russian perspective, they're actually ticked at Putin that Putin's actually went along with this for as long as he has. In fact, they're ticked off he hasn't invaded and taken out military bases yet. I mean, from the Russians' perspective, from the like people in Russia, they believe that NATO and the United States are setting up things along the Russian border, which they are, and they don't like that kind of thing along their border. And it's been there for a while, and it hasn't moved. And finally, Putin and the Russian people have just had enough. But Putin is still piddling this along, still trying to, get out of this in a way that's not as big of a deal as it might end up being. But the people in Russia are like, they're pissed off. They're like, well, you have this military buildup on our border. Like, what the hell? So that's their perspective. And that was a deal that they made after.
I don't know if he's done for the night or if he just had a disconnection.
The inner demons got him.
But I mean, like from the Russians' perspective, that's what they're saying. And that was a deal that was made after the Cold War was ended, after the Soviet Union fell, was that like the U.S.
Welcome
NATO
back,
wasn't going to
future
build
guy.
up that kind of thing along Russia, and they've completely thrown that out the window. And so now Russia's pissed off. That's really what this boils down to. And then here you've got people in the United States acting like, oh my golly, we need to protect our corrupt cronies in Ukraine. Let's bomb Russia and get rid of them. Because you have to understand as well, in Ukraine, they had a color revolution in Ukraine that was underneath the Obama administration, and they overthrew the government that was there, and they instituted another one. And well, I mean, in a certain sense. And and so now there's all of this American influence there. It's corrupt as hell. And they tried to do that in Russia. It was called the White Revolution is what it was called in Russia. And they were trying to overtake Putin, and Putin just put a stop to that right there, and he got rid of some of the people in the United States Embassy that was working there, working in coordination with people on the ground, activists and so forth. And they were pushing against the Russian government at that time. So Putin is not very happy with the goings on, especially, I mean, this administration here, all the people in the Obama administration are now back. This is almost like Obama's third term, you might say, even though Obama's never really, said anything like that on TV 3 separate times, but what the hell? But this, so that's kind of the background of this. And so we have congressmen sitting around talking about dropping tactical nukes around Russia and around Ukraine because, hey, let's just show them what we're worth. It's like, really? I mean,
I think he still does not want any full-blown war. Number one. Number two.
No, he doesn't. Obviously, does not want a full-blown war. He just wants to go and take it over.
So I think he'll test the West, test the United States and NATO as significantly as he can. Yes, I think he will. But I think he'll pay a serious and dear price for it that he doesn't think now will cost him what it's going to cost him.
And again, from their perspective, that's not at all what this is.
Having done it. Now, whether or not, I think that, how can I say this?
I don't know, Joe. How can you say things? True to know, and showing up pressure?
That he
Vaticath care
is dealing with what I believe he thinks is the most tragic thing that's happened to Mother Russia, in that the Berlin Wall came down, the empire has been lost, the near abroad is gone, etc. The Soviet Union has been split. But think about what he has. He has 8 time zones, burning tundra that will not freeze again naturally, a situation where he has a lot of oil and gas, but he is trying to find his place in the world between China and the West. And so I'm not so sure that he has...
All right, that is the most condescending crap I've ever heard.
It is. It's very condescending.
That is hilarious.
It's very condescending.
He's
like, oh, Mother children. Russia or whatever.
They're just lost children trying to find their way in the world. They need our guidance. They need our guidance and our dollars. So let's help them out.
Yes, legit.
David, I'm not so sure
that's exactly what he's saying.
Is certain what he's going
This is going to do nothing
but
further agitate Russia.
He has to do something.
All of this
and by
talk.
the way,
and they just keep throwing it around
him.
flamboyantly like it's nothing.
The 2 things he said to me that he wants guarantees on. One is Ukraine will never be part of NATO.
I mean, we're talking war, and he just throws it around like it's nothing.
And 2, that...
I'm sorry, Jimmy, did you ask a question?
Like all these globalists do.
No.
Continue. I was just ranting a little bit.
Well, that's what we want. That's why we're all here. Oh, okay.
NATO or there will not be strategic weapons.
Ukraine will not be part of NATO.
Ukraine.
Ever.
Well, we can work out something on the second piece, pretending what he does along the Russian line as well.
In my opinion, they might as well be already.
On the first piece,
and that's why
we have a number of treaties internationally and in Europe that suggest that you get to choose who you want to be with. But the likelihood that Ukraine is going to join NATO in the near term is not very likely, based on much more work they have to do in terms of democracy and a few other things going on there, and whether or not the major allies in the West would vote.
Bless you.
Oh, I was just complaining. I was just finishing a sentence for him.
So there's room to work if
Whether
he
or not
wants
they
to
join
do that.
NATO really just depends on if they have a lot more things to do, like pay my son.
Right.
But I think, as usual, he's going to. Well, I probably shouldn't go any further, but.
Wait, what did you? I missed that.
He's going to.
We'll go back 5 seconds and listen
I probably
to that
shouldn't go
again.
Well, I probably shouldn't go any further, but I think it will hurt him badly.
He just
You're
pauses for like
offering some way out here, some off ramp, and it sounds like what it is at least an informal assurance that NATO is.
What
not
you
gonna
sound like right now is like you're being suffocated with a pillow.
Take in Ukraine anytime in the next few decades, and it sounds like you're saying we would never put nuclear weapons there. He also wants us to move all of our nuclear weapons out of Europe and not have troops rotating through the old Soviet bloc. Do you think there's space for that there as well?
No, there's not space for that. We won't permanently station, but the idea we're going to actually increase troop presence in Poland or Romania, et cetera, if in fact he moves, because we have a sacred obligation in Article 5 to defend those countries. They are part of NATO. We don't have that obligation relative to Ukraine.
Oh, it's sacred now. NATO is sacred.
It's a sacred thing, huh?
Sacred.
Great concern about what happens.
That was a weird choosing.
You know, just all the rest of your NATO allies that you literally left to die in Afghanistan. But what
because
the hell?
we actually upgraded presence in like Poland and other NATO countries that are nearby Ukraine, you're going to see this huge influx of people coming and traveling convoy from Ukraine into, Poland and all these other countries that are, NATO. Because, people, when they feel the pressure or whatever, and they, been, family members have been shot at or bombarded with missiles or ground artillery, they have the tendency to try running away from that as opposed to fighting back to keep what it's theirs.
Yeah,
because not everybody's armed.
Vote to leave NATO and leave that entire region the hell alone and say fuck y'all can deal with it, grow up. That's just me.
Right? Yeah, he's acting like Ukraine's not already actively part of NATO for the most part. I mean, for crying out loud, like I said, they already have control of a lot of things to do with the government. It's so corrupt. His son, him, Obama, there's all these other people, individuals that are high ups. It's all corrupt as hell. Their bank, their whole shebang there in Ukraine, they might as well be just effectively a part of NATO. They already have a military presence there, U.S. military presence. So it's like, well, what the hell? I mean, effectively, you've already made them a part of your globalist type system here. I mean, and then it's like, oh well, if they move into Ukraine, we're gonna build up in other places, as though that's not a. I mean, it's like, so a non-NATO nation, you're going to build up a NATO response. Isn't that a little contradictory? But hey, I'm just
instead of just going in and pushing Russia back, let's just allow them to do what they want to do and create these tiny little wars with other countries.
I think we tried that with Germany one, and it turned out badly.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, like he says, like if they make a move on Ukraine, he's going to put up a presence in Romania and Poland and other places. And it's like, well, wait a minute. If Ukraine's a neutral country, right? Like if Ukraine's not a part of NATO, then why are you reacting in this way? Why are you going nuts? Like, are you trying to, and then of course, again, there's the response to Ukraine itself, right? That they've already talked about before this, but I'm just saying, like, it just seems very contradictory. It's like, gee, I mean, You're seeming very protective of Ukraine here, but like, oh, Ukraine's not a part of NATO. Ukraine's not a, whatever, but we'll just have strong reactions to it. What?
It's literally where his
Anyway.
money is. It's his
It's just a
assets.
contradictory statement.
That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's all the further I was going with it. It's just
Great
contradictory.
concern about what happens in Ukraine. Thank you. Maureen, USA Today.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to follow up on your comment on Build Back Better and also ask you a question about the pandemic. You said that you're confident you can pass big chunks of Build Back Better this year. Does that wording mean that you are thinking about
it's little big
breaking the package up into individual
with a
portions?
black beak?
And then on the pandemic, now that the Supreme Court has blocked the vaccination or test rule for larger businesses, are you reconsidering whether to require vaccines for domestic flights as a way to boost vaccination rates?
No, look.
Does she have a mouth?
First
Do we
of all,
know? At this point, I don't know. I mean, I think most kids in the schools probably don't know if their teachers have mouths or noses at this point.
Last part of the question.
Yeah.
And usually you have the tendency, I mean, a lot of people, obviously look at other body parts, but usually when you like try to start a relationship, you look at each other in the face and you look at what they look like, because you're like, I don't want to look like what that sign language lady looks like right now. I don't want you looking like that if I'm going to procreate with you. I want you to actually, maybe some people do, but
the Supreme Court decision, I think, was a mistake, but you still see thousands and thousands of people who work
these
for
kids
major
are going to look
corporations having
weird
to be tested as a consequence of the decision made by the
Yeah, you go on a
corporation,
date,
not by
and it's like,
the standard I set.
I'm pretty.
That is there. I think you'll see that
I just wear a
increase,
mask
not
all the time.
decrease. Number one. What was the first part of your question?
On your comment that you made, that you're confident
Yes.
that major chunks of Build Back
Yes.
Better can pass. Are you breaking it up? Does that
Yes.
mean?
It's clear to me that we're going to have to
What were we talking about?
probably break it up.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of things
I think
are clear to you,
that
Jim.
we can get, and I've been talking to a number of my colleagues on the Hill, I think it's clear that we would be able to get support for the 500 plus billion dollars for
you can make up what
energy
they're
and the
talking
environment
about.
issues that are there. Number one. Number two, I know that the two people who've opposed on the Democratic side, at least, support a number of the things that are in there.
No,
For
I mean,
example,
like,
Joe Manchin strongly supports
little
early
late
education.
here, so I'm coming in.
So
way
basically
later than
what
I
did
actually
happen
talked.
is what they're talking about is, what's going through Senate right now, or was going through Senate. And both Manchin and Sinema did side with Republicans and vote down the Republican or the filibuster tonight before they went on break.
Oh, well, good for them, I guess.
Yeah.
Although I don't trust
Education,
either
3
one
and
of them,
4
but
years
you know,
of
hey.
age, strongly supports that.
Well, they'll come back tomorrow and they'll finish, talking about it again or whatever, and see, they'll throw it back at them again until Democrats get what they want. But they're not going to get that filibuster
Throw it at Kamala
squashed because
again. You know she loves
no
hearing about
minority is
Joe
going to
Manchin.
vote against it. And they know dang well if things keep going the way they are because of the movement of people and how the population controls the House of Representatives, and that it would actually kind of change other things come up in the future or whatever. So they really don't want to do away with it because they don't want to be part of the minority all of a sudden and have the other side go and ramshackle through whatever they want passed.
There is strong support for, I think.
Yeah, I sat here all day watching or listening to Senate.
A number of the way in which to pay for these, pay for this proposal. So I think
I've done
there
that
is.
before.
I'm not going to negotiate against myself as to what
It's kind of
should
an
and shouldn't
important
be in
deal
it,
right
but
now.
I think we can break the package
Just
up,
kinda
get
didn't
as
think
much as
about
we
it.
can now, and come back and fight for the rest later.
Yeah.
Ken, Wall Street Journal, Ken Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to ask you about the economy. As you said earlier, Americans are feeling the squeeze of inflation, oil price.
Oh my God, he sounds like Shirts trying to do a Bill
Wanted
Gates
you heard
impression.
softball.
Prices have been at about a 7-year high recently. How long should Americans expect to face higher prices when they're at the grocery store, when they're at the gas pump? Is this something that they're going to see into the summer, into next fall?
Well, you know,
and
Bill
separately,
Gates is yeah, a little more has more
He
intonation
sounds
in
like
his
you
voice.
doing the impression. So it's like he's trying to do you doing Bill Gates.
You know, my father was head of Planned Parenthood, and that was very controversial.
You talk about the
Like it
importance of
still
the Fed,
isn't.
but isn't that an acknowledgement that you're limited in what you can do if you're relying on the Fed to make decisions and you're
We really
unable to
just
get a Build Back Better proposal
number of
through?
children
Aren't you
down.
simply
That's
limited
all
in what you can do to deal with inflation?
Well, look, as you know, Ken, the inflation has everything to do with the supply chain. And I think what you're seeing
Except for those
is
damn
that
meat farmers.
we've been able to make progress
ranchers or
on speeding
whatever.
up the access to
That's what you would say.
materials. For example, 1/3 of the increase in cost of living is the cost of automobiles. The reason automobiles have skyrocketed in price is because of the lack of computer chips. So we have the capacity, and we're going to do everything in
I
our power
wonder
to do
why
it,
that
to become
is.
self-reliant on the computer chips
Totally
that
not
we need
because of
in
you
order to be able to produce more automobiles.
and your
That's underway. We've
administration.
already passed, within the context of another bill, money for that in the House of Representatives, before the House of Representatives now. But I think there's a way we can move to, if we can move to get, for example, that one thing done, it can make a big difference in terms of the total cost of living. Now, with regard to the whole issue of energy prices, that gets a little more complicated. But you saw what happened when I was able to convince everyone from including China, India, a number of other countries to agree with us to go into their version of their petroleum reserve, to release more into the market. So
you mean
that
the
brought
reserve
down
that you gave to India?
Yeah, that reserve that
You know, our reserve.
The one that there was his predecessor went and made sure it was built up. Gave it away.
price about 12, 15 cents a gallon, some places more. There's going to be a reckoning along the line here as to whether or not we're going to continue to see oil prices continue to go up in ways that are going up now relative to what impact that's going to have on the producers. And so it's going to be hard. I think that's the place where most middle-class people, working-class people get hit the most. They pull up to a pump and all of a sudden, instead of paying $2.40 a gallon, they're paying $5 a gallon. That's going to be really difficult. But so we're going to continue to work on trying to increase oil supplies that are available. And I think there's ways in which we can be of some value added in terms of the price of gas, natural gas and the like, to take the burden off the European countries that are now.
I'll add this to his little statement. It's basically the company, I can't remember the name off the top of my head, the company that was going to actually push for the Keystone XL to actually push to the United States and transport oil, had canceled what they were going to do completely, and they've rewrote the map on how they were going to actually rebuild everything through and push their oil reserves to both sides of Canada, running off of 4 different lines. And basically, Canada gets to keep all the money as to trying to, give the States anything at all. And interesting, I lost Shirts. Oh, wow. Maybe he'll come back.
Now
maybe he's going to go look that up real quick.
Russia. But it's going to be
I
hard.
just wanted to go
It's going
unlive
to be
myself.
very hard. But I think that we have to deal
No, I lost America's Shirts.
with, for example, like I said, you have a circumstance where people are paying more for a pound of hamburger meat than they ever paid. Well, one of the reasons for that is you don't have that many folks out there that are the ones that are got the big four controlling it all.
I'm here.
And so you're going to see more and more. We're going to move on this competition
I see
piece
you.
to allow more and more smaller operations to come in and be able to engage in buying and providing the access to much cheaper meat than exists now. But it's going to be a haul. Now, and as you, I assume the reason you said if I can't get Build Back Better relates to what those 17 Nobel laureate economists said, that if in fact we could pass it, it would actually lower the impact on inflation, reduce inflation over time, et cetera. So there's a lot we have to do. It's not going to be easy, but I think we can get it done, but it's going to be painful for a lot of people in the meantime. That's why the single best way to take the burden off middle class and working class folks is to pass the Build Back Better piece that are things that they're paying a lot of money for now. If you get to trade off higher gases, you're putting up with higher price of hamburgers and gas versus whether or not you're going to be able to pay for education and or childcare and the like. I think most people would make the trade. Their bottom line would be better in middle class households. But it's going to be hard, and it's going to take a lot of work.
Sir, you mentioned China. Do you think the time has come to begin lifting some of the tariffs on Chinese imports, or is there a need for China to make do on some of its commitments in the Phase 1 agreement? Some business groups would like you to begin lifting up those tariffs on China.
Well, I know that, and that's why my trade rep is working on that right now. The answer is uncertain. It's uncertain. I'd like to be able to be in a position where I could say they're meeting the commitments, or more of their commitments, and be able to lift some of it. But we're not there yet. Nancy, CBS.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. This afternoon, the Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell said that the midterm elections are going to be a report card on your progress on inflation, border security, and standing up to Russia. Do you think that that's a fair way to look at it? And if so, how do you think that report card looks right now?
I think report cards can look pretty good if that's where we're at. But look, the idea that Mitch is...
Says the guy that said that he had a super high GPA and graduated at the top of his class, that actually had the really low GPA and graduated at the bottom side of his class. He thinks his report card's going to look good.
Has been very clear. He's doing anything to prevent Biden from being a success. I get on with Mitch. I actually like Mitch McConnell. We like one another, but he has one straightforward objective: make sure that there's nothing I do that makes me look good in his mind, with the public at large. And that's okay. I'm a big boy. I've been here before. But the fact is that I think that I'm happy to debate and have a referendum on how I handle the economy, whether or not I've made progress on. Look, again, how can I'm taking too long answering your questions. I apologize. I think that the fundamental question is, what's Mitch for? What's he for?
He's for himself. That's what he's for.
For on immigration. What's he for? What's he proposing to make anything better? What's he for dealing with Russia? It's different than I'm proposing that many of his Republican friends or his colleagues are supporting as well. What's he for on these things? What are they for? So everything's a choice. A choice. I think look, I've laid out a proposal on immigration that if we passed it, we'd be in a totally different place right now. But we're not there because we don't have a single Republican vote. My buddy John McCain's gone. So, I mean, it's going to take time. And again, I go back to
it's crazy.
Sununu's quote.
Don't worry. Give Dan Crenshaw a
long?
couple
I mean,
years. He'll be in the Senate and
rhetorical
take his
question.
place.
I know this is not fair to ask the press, so
Right.
I'm not asking you. But think about, did you ever think
That's
that
not better.
one man out of office
No, it's not.
could intimidate an entire party where they're unwilling to take any vote contrary to what he thinks should be taken for fear of being defeated in a primary? I've had 5 Republican senators talk to me, bump into me, quote unquote, or sit with me, who've told me that they agree with whatever I'm talking about for them to do. But Joe, if I do it, I'm going to defeat it in a primary. We got to break that. It's got to change. And I doubt you're all, sounds like I'm being solicitous, you're all bright as hell, well informed, more informed than any group of people in America.
Than himself.
But did any of you think that you get to a point where not a single Republican would diverge on a major issue? Not one. Anyway.
Those 5 Republican senators are?
Sure. No, are you kidding me? I maintain confidentiality.
On voting
But I'm
rights,
sure you've spoken to some.
on voting rights, sir,
Yes.
at your first press conference 10 months ago, I asked you if there was anything you could do beyond legislation
You just said
to protect voting
sure.
rights. And at that time, you said, yes, but I'm not going to lay out a strategy before
Maintain
you and the world
confidentiality.
now.
Okay, bro.
Now that legislation appears to be hopelessly stalled, can you now lay out your strategy to protect voting rights?
Well, I'm not prepared to do that in detail in terms of the executive orders I may be able to engage in and other things I can do. But one of the things we have done, we have significantly beefed up the number of enforcers in the Justice Department who are there to challenge these unconstitutional efforts, in our view, unconstitutional efforts on the part of the Republicans to stack the election and subvert the outcomes. We have begun to organize in ways that we didn't before the communities beyond the civil rights community to make the case to the rest of the American people what's about to happen, what will happen if, in fact, these things move forward. If I had talked to you, not you, I'm using you in an editorial sense, if I had talked to the public about the whole idea of subversion of elections by deciding who the electors are after the fact, I think people would have looked at me like, whoa. I mean, I taught constitutional law for 20 years, a 3-credit course in separation of powers, and on Saturday mornings when I was a senator. And I never thought we'd get into a place where we were talking about being able to actually, what they tried to do this last time out, send different electors to the state legislative bodies to represent who won the election.
He obviously
Saying
has
that I
not
didn't
read
win,
history and the election of Andrew Jackson, or was it Thomas Jefferson? I think it was Jefferson. Yeah, it was Jefferson. And how that happened twice in history, and the one that chose the electors happened to be the one that was actually on the ballot to be president. So, just saying.
Mm-hmm.
Constitutional law.
Republican candidate won. I doubt whether anybody thought that would ever happen in America in the 21st century, but it's happening. And so I guess what I'm saying is, Nancy, is that I think that there are a number of things we can do, but I also think we will be able to get significant pieces of the legislation, if we don't get it all now, to build to get it so that we get a big chunk of the John Lewis legislation as well as the fair elections process.
Sir, on COVID, if you don't mind, you touted the number.
Before we go on to that, basically, I mean, because it was about the report card. What it comes down to is there's 28 Democrats and 14 Republicans that are looking to retire this year out of the House. Not necessarily all of them are actually retiring. Some of them are actually looking for different seats. Some of them are trying to go for Senate seats because there's people in the Senate that are getting to the age where they need to actually also possibly retire. And that's where, the report card could totally come and turn around on them and actually just like totally go opposite of what it is right now. That's a lot of seats that are becoming available very soon here. So, that report card could totally look a lot different than what he's actually thinking it's going to look.
Number of Americans who are now fully vaccinated with 2 shots. But even some of your own medical advisors say that people aren't fully protected unless they have that 3rd shot, a booster. Why hasn't this White House changed the definition of fully vaccinated to include that 3rd booster shot? Is it because the numbers of fully vaccinated Americans would suddenly look a lot less
No,
impressive?
it's not that at all.
Susan, we're not talking about this stuff or whatever. We're telling everybody that they should actually still see their doctor and do what's best for them.
This has become clearer and clearer. And every time I speak of it, I say, if you've been vaccinated, get your booster shot. Everybody get the booster shot. It's the optimum protection you can have. You're protected very well with 2 shots. If it's the Pfizer, anyway, you're protected. But you are better protected with the booster shot.
The definition right now.
I'm following what the answer is yes, get the booster shot. It's all part of the same thing. You're better protected. Okay, Alex Alper, Reuters.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to follow up briefly on a question asked by Bloomberg. You said that Russia would be held accountable if it invades, and it depends on what it does. It's one thing if it's a minor incursion, and we end up having to fight about what to do and what not to do. Are you saying that a minor incursion by Russia into Ukrainian territory would not lead to the sanctions that you have threatened, or are you effectively giving Putin permission to make a small incursion into the country?
Good question. That's how it did sound like, didn't it? The most important thing to do, big nations can't bluff, number 1. Number 2.
So it looks like Grim bounced for the night.
That we would do anything to split NATO, which would have a profound impact on
I'm assuming
one of
Schertz is having an
I
issue
think
with his
profound
internet
impact
again.
on
It
one
looks
of
like he
Putin's
totally went away.
objectives to weaken NATO would be a big mistake. So the question is, if it's something significantly short of a significant invasion, or not even significant, just major military forces coming across. For example, it's one thing to determine that if they continue to use cyber.
What's going on? Jimmy?
My out too.
That's fine.
Efforts. Well, we can respond the same way with cyber. They have FSB people in Ukraine now trying to undermine the solidarity within Ukraine.
Welcome
about
back,
Russia,
Schertz.
and to try to promote Russian interest.
But
it's very important that
you wouldn't believe it,
that
but
we keep.
I got swatted, and then this guy just like was this weed pushing guy who wanted to run for Congress just walks into my house. It's really weird. It's strange. And it's just he just walked right in.
So familiar.
Like, what the hell? Yeah, yeah, exactly, right? Like, no, well,
everyone in NATO on the same page, and that's what I'm spending a lot of time doing. There are differences. There are differences in NATO as to what countries are willing to do, depending on what happens, the degree to which they're able to go. And I want to be clear with you. The serious imposition of sanctions relative to dollar transactions and other things are things that are going to have a negative impact on the United States, as well as a negative impact on the economies of Europe as well, a devastating impact on Russia.
Well, it's a good thing that they actually want to fix the internet across the United States and the infrastructure stuff or whatever, because it seems like there's an awful lot of people that have problems with their internet.
And so I got to make sure everybody's on the same page as we move along. I think we will if there's something that
move along.
Russian forces crossing the border, killing Ukrainian fighters, etc. I think that changes everything. But it depends on what he does, is actually what extent we're going to be able to get total unity on the NATO front.
If I may ask a quick one on
On
Iran,
the
I just
Russian
wanted
front.
to get your sense of whether the Vienna talks are making any progress, if you still think it's possible to reach a deal for
Unity on
both
the
sides to
Russian
resume
front.
compliance with the Iran nuclear deal, or if it's time to give up on that. Thank you.
I'll do it in reverse. It's not time to give up. There is some progress being made. The P5+1 is on the same page, but it remains to be seen. Okay.
It's not the
Iran's
P6,
kind
it's the
of
P5
imploding
plus
from the
1.
inside. Oh, say that again. Sorry, I
It's not the P6, it's the P5 plus 1. That's, I believe that's Pakistani-led countries, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh.
Or something or other, something to do with. I'd have to look that up again to be sure.
But I will say Iran is self-imploding. So there's that too.
Kristen, NBC.
Very quickly on Russia, I do have a number of domestic policy issues, but on Russia, very quickly, it seemed like you said that you have assessed.
Holy
you
hell!
feel
It
as
looks
though
like she
he
has
will move in. Has this administration have you
freaking
determined
Tesla
whether
version
President
of a
Putin
mask
plans
on right
to
there. That's like
invade or move into
looks like
Ukraine,
one of those
as
Tesla
you said?
new Tesla cars or whatever.
The only
the
thing
boxy
I'm
looking ones.
confident of,
you know,
is that decision
He's got a fake
is
version of that.
totally, solely,
fake
completely
version.
Putin decision. Nobody else is going to make that decision. No one else is going to impact that decision. He's making that decision. And I suspect it matters which side of the bed he gets up on in the morning as to exactly what he's going to do. And
see all these insults.
The P5 plus 1 is a group of nations working together on the Iran nuclear deal. The countries include 5 permanent members of the United Nations, including with an addition of Germany, which is the plus 1. The P5 would be China, France, Russia, UK, and the United States.
Nothing fishy about that.
No, not at all.
I think it is not irrational, if he wanted to talk about dealing with strategic doctrine and dealing with force structures in Europe and in the European parts of Russia. But I don't know whether he's decided he wants to do that or not. So far, in the 3 meetings we've had, OSCE and anyway, have not produced anything, because the impression I get from my Secretary of State, my National Security Advisor, and my other senior officials that are doing these meetings is that there's a question of whether the people they're talking to know what he's going to do.
Just you and me, sure.
So the answer is, but based on
did you hear what he just
a
said?
number of criteria as to what
He
could
just
do. For
insulted
example,
Putin.
For him to move,
yeah, he did,
and said that
occupy
people
the whole
around
country,
Putin don't even know what
particularly from
Putin's
the
going to
north
do.
of
Like
Belarus.
Putin's this
It's,
unstable freak.
He's going to have to wait a little bit till the ground's frozen, so he can cross. To move
That's
in a
total
direction
projection
where
right there.
he wants to talk about what's going. We're continuing to provide for defense capacities.
Like,
to
oh,
the,
Putin's
to the
unstable and
Ukrainians.
freakish. Like,
We're
oh.
talking about what's going on in both the
pot
the
calling
Baltic
the
and the
kettle
Black Sea,
black.
etc. There's a whole range of things that I'm
Black.
sure he's trying to calculate how quickly he can do what he wants to do and what does he want to do.
So,
but he's not. He's an.
Jimmy's kind of stuck on the outside right now. He just messaged me through Discord and says that he can't actually get back in.
He's stuck on
saying
the
that
outside.
The stream is, yeah. He's saying that the stream isn't available.
It's Adele. Hello,
so I don't know if that's something good or if that's something
on the
bad.
outside.
I resent him a link. So, oh, there he is.
Informed individual, and I'm not sure. I believe he's calculating what the immediate, short term, and the near term and the long term consequences of Russia will be.
And maybe you caught the wrong link or something.
No, I had the same one already in my clip tray for the links.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna have to go back through Discord and remove all the old links. That way, that doesn't happen. Just in case that it is the case, but
sounds good.
I don't think he's made up his mind yet.
I want to ask you about your domestic agenda. You've gotten a lot of questions about voting rights, Mr. President, but I want to ask you
Yes, because we
about
don't have any
black
of those in
voters, one of
America.
your most loyal constituencies.
We've never had
I
those
was
before.
in Congressman
Voting rights.
Clyburn's district
Doesn't
yesterday in
exist.
South Carolina. You opened this news conference talking about him.
You have
I
the right to
spoke
vote
a-
Democrat.
that's legit what it's like. You have the right to vote Democrat and nothing else. That's just sorry. It's just the way it is. Oh,
I mean-
and that ballot will be taken for you. So you know,
supposedly the last time somebody signed a voting right thing or whatever was what, George Bush, one of the two. Was it Junior?
No, yeah, that was Bush. It was a 98-0 or 98-2, I think. Vote in the Senate.
a number of black voters who fought to get you elected, and now they feel as though you are not fighting hard enough for them and their priorities. And they told me they see this push on voting rights more
They
as
all
a
told you.
last-minute PR push
They
than
all
it
just
is
got
a
on a-
legitimate effort to
on
get
a Zoom
legislation
call. They all just
passed.
told this bitch
so
what the hell
what do
was
you
going on,
say
right?
to these black voters who say that you do not have their back as you promised on the campaign trail?
I've had their back. I've had their back my entire career.
I got to
I've
step
never
away
not
for a
had their
second.
back.
Okay.
And I
Watch the
started
sign
on
language
voting rights
chick.
issues long, long ago. That's what got me involved in politics in the first place. And I think part of the problem is
totally wasn't money.
look, there's significant
Cronyism
disagreement
and corruption. That's
in
not
every
a, that's not a
community
thing.
on whether or not the timing of assertions made by people has been in the most timely way. So I'm sure that there are those who are saying that why didn't Biden push John Lewis bill as hard as he pushed it the last month? Why didn't he push it 6 months ago as hard as he did now?
Because Biden's
the
not
fact
there at the
is
White
that
House half the damn time, and he doesn't know what the hell's going on. Like now,
there
he doesn't know what the
is,
hell to say.
You notice that she's not doing a direct
This
translation of
is
what
the
he's
problem. This is why it took him
that
6
is
months.
not one's own choice. It's somewhat
He
dictated
just
by
answered
events
the
that are
question. He didn't
happening
even know he answered
in
the
country and around the world as to what.
That's actually a common misconception.
But
Is
part of the problem
sign language
is,
interpreters?
well,
There's a difference between
I
translating
have
and
not
interpreting.
been
Sign language
out in the
interpret. They don't
community nearly
translate.
enough.
So you're never going to
I've
see a
been
direct
here
translation.
an awful lot. I find myself in a situation where I don't get a chance to look people in the eye because
She's
of both
getting it, though.
COVID and things that are happening in Washington, to be able to go out and do the things that I've always been able to do pretty well. Connect with people, let them take a measure of my
Oh,
sincerity.
you mean
let
how
them
you
take a
called
measure of
them all
who I am.
lion?
For example, I mean, as I
lion
pointed out in
dog face
South
Cody
Carolina,
soldiers.
you know, last time when I was
Goes in front
chairman
of
of
the
the Judiciary
military,
Committee, I got the
makes
Voting
a
Rights
stupid
Act
joke.
extended for
Laugh, you
5 years,
stupid
and I
bastards!
got
Like, yeah, you mean that?
for it.
He
That's what
loves
I've been
people.
doing
Laugh,
my
you
whole
dumb
career.
bastards.
And so the
He
idea
loves
that
people.
I
He loves people.
that
He takes all the
man.
men's
that
wives
I
and runs
didn't either
runs away with them and
anticipate
like
or
kisses them and
because
touches them and does
I
all this
didn't
stuff in a
speak
corner
to it
someplace, then runs back.
as
He loves
fervently
people.
as they want me to
All the little
earlier.
girls standing
In the
around.
meantime,
You know,
I was spending a lot of time
feel that.
Remember
You know,
them
he
trying to
loves
frame
hours
it
and
how
hours and
Trump hated the
hours
military?
talking with my colleagues on the Democratic side, trying to get them to agree that if in fact this occurred, if this push continued, that they would be there for John Lewis. And anyway, so
and anyway,
but I think that's a problem
that
is my own making
what
by
am I
not
gonna say?
communicating as much as I should have. Yet you find
Because you
that,
can't.
when you deal with members of the Black
You
Caucus, and
physically
others in
cannot
the United
communicate
States
anymore.
Congress, I still have very
Not that
close
you were any
working
good at it
relationships. So
before, or that you
it's
really could
like
before,
every
effectively,
community.
but
I'm
now it's
sure
like,
that there
damn.
are those in the community, and I'm a big labor guy. I'm sure there's people in labor saying, "Why haven't I been able to do A, B, C, or D?"
This is why you shut down the
I'm a big
pipeline.
labor guy that I've never actually worked an actual job my whole life.
Yes.
So it's just going to take a little bit of time.
You
Which is
put
why you shut down
Vice
all of
President
those
Harris
jobs
in
and,
charge
the
of
pipeline
voting
that's
rights.
going on.
I
Are you
once picked up a
satisfied
broom.
with her work?
Yeah,
on
right,
this
right.
No, he worked at a pool, remember?
issue?
You gotta,
and can you guarantee
got those hairy legs, and they like to wipe the fingers down and
Corn Pop was
watch
a
as
bad dude.
the hairs
I
back
learned
up
to like
on my leg,
kids
and
and
they just
roaches.
slick it down, and the blonde hairs on my legs, they just love the blonde hairs on my legs.
T, do you commit
They
that
just
she will
shine
be
in
your
the
running mate in
sunshine and they
2024,
like to rub
provided
my
that you run
leg
again?
down.
Yes and yes.
Expand.
And I like
Pardon
kids
me?
hopping
Do you care
on
to
my
expand?
lap. Mhm.
No, there's no need to. I mean, I asked the question. She's going to be my running mate, number one. And number two, I did put her in charge. I think she's doing a good job.
Let me ask you,
Whoa,
big
so he-
picture,
wait, wait, wait.
particularly
He's
when
got
you
the
think
question,
about
is he still
voting
supposed to
rights
put
and the
Kamala?
struggles you've had to unify your own party around voting rights. Unity was one of your key campaign promises. In fact, in
Yeah.
your inaugural address, you said
Yes,
your whole
unity
soul was in
around
bringing America
Democrats and
together,
around the globalists
uniting
and
our
around
people.
Klaus
People
Schwab
heard the
and,
speech that you
unity
gave on
around the
voting
Build
rights
Back
in
Better
Georgia
agenda,
recently,
unity
in which
around
you described
voting
those who were
Democrat all the
opposed to you to
time or
George
else
Wallace
get
and
thrown in
Jefferson
prison,
Davis.
basically.
and
I
some
mean, unity, people. We love you. We love everybody. We want unity on this issue.
Hey, I want to hear this question.
Very, some
whole soul
people
was in
did some
bringing
secret.
America together, uniting our people. People heard the speech that you gave on voting rights in Georgia recently, in which you described those who were opposed to you to George Wallace and Jefferson Davis, and some people took exception to that. What do you say to those who were offended by your speech? And is
yeah.
this country more unified than it was when you first took office?
Number one, anybody who listened to the speech, I did not say that there were going to be a George Wallace or a Bull Connor.
You did too. I made a video about
Yeah,
it.
legit.
I said we're going to have a decision in history that is.
He listed like 3 Democrats out of the whole bunch. So I mean, he can list all the things that he wants. You go watch my video. It's very interesting.
Going to be marked just like it was then. You either voted on the side that did make you
That's
George
right, they are.
Wallace or did make you Bull Connor.
Democrats.
But if you did not vote for the Voting Rights Act back then, you were voting with those who agreed with Connor, those who agreed with
Right, those Southern Democrats, and they try saying that
Exactly.
things
Only that
switch,
if you
but
didn't vote, you were
the
black.
switch is a total lie. The switch is a total lie. It never actually happened the way they said it. You're looking at those handful of Dixiecrats.
I think Mitch did a real
Show
good
me
job of
congressmen,
making it
show me the
sound
senators
like
where they
I
changed.
was
You can't find them.
attacking them. If you notice, I
Complete
haven't
lie.
attacked anybody publicly, any senator, any congressman publicly, and my disagreements with them have been made to them, communicated to them privately or in person with them. My desire still is, look, I underestimated one very important thing. I never thought that the Republicans, like for example, I said, they got very upset. I said, there are 16 members of the present United States Senate who voted to extend the Voting Rights Act. Now, they got very offended by that. It wasn't an accusation, it's stating a fact. What has changed? What happened? What happened?
You lied.
Why is not a single Republican? Not one. That's not the Republican Party. So that's not an attack.
Is the country more unified than when you first
Yes,
took office?
the Republican Party that's globalist.
The
right.
answer is,
The portion
based
of them
on
that
some
are
of the stuff we've got
globalists
done, I'd say
take it over like
yes,
you
but
don't
it's
want
not
what
nearly
you
unified
want,
as
you
it should be.
traitor.
Look, I still contend, and I know you'll have a right to judge me by this, I still contend that
Except for you won't.
unless you can reach consensus in a democracy, you cannot sustain the democracy. And so this is a real test, whether or not my counterpart in China is right or not when he says
Your counterpart in China.
Oh my God, he's going to go into this, isn't he? He said this exact same thing.
Autocracies
Is for the State
are
of
the
the
only thing
Union.
that are going to prevail because
Last
democracies
February.
take too long to make decisions and countries are too divided. I believe we're going through one of those inflection points in history that occurs every several generations or even more than that, even more time than that, where things are changing almost regardless of any particular policy. The world's changing in big ways. We're going to see, if you've heard me say this before, we're going to see more change in the next 10 years than we've seen in the last 50 years.
Mark that
because
down.
of technology.
Right. You're going to see more change in the next 10 years than you will in the next 50.
Agenda 2030, man.
Because of fundamental alterations in alliances that are occurring, not because of any one individual, just because of the nature of things. And so I think you're going to see an awful lot of transition. And the question
no
is, can we
Klaus
keep
Schwab
up with
involved.
it? Can we maintain the democratic
World Economic Forum
institutions that
involved.
we have, not just here, but around the world, to be able to generate democratic
those
consensus on how to proceed?
No
It's going to
George
be hard.
Soros's.
It's going to be hard.
No Bill
But it requires leadership to do it. And I'm not giving up on the prospect of being able to do that. Thank you.
I mean, he's literally pause this.
Schwab.
He's literally throwing out, "Hey guys, let's debate. Do we want a federalist republic? Do we want a federalist representative republic? Or you know what? Maybe we should just go full blown authoritarian." You know, I mean, the questions in the air comes every few generations. You know.
So
He said this at the before his State of the Union address back last February. I believe it was February. Yeah, it was February. It was last February or March, somewhere around there. Where he before that in that day he literally started talking about this exact same thing. He said the exact same thing. I was talking to Xi Jinping, and things are changing, and things get faster, and we have to look at whether or not a democracy can survive in this kind of environment, and we need to, start thinking about things. It's like,
Right.
wow.
So before we
But
move
Trump
on, you
was the
notice
authoritarian, guys.
the time frame down below. It says there's
He's just
another
literally
hour
debating
left,
it.
and he's ready to actually close his book because he's gone through everything that's on his note cards. So now everything that's not on his note cards, he actually goes off and he says, "Well, let's try doing a couple more." And he breaks it up and he starts over a couple times or whatever, where he said, "Okay, well, let's do a little bit more. We'll do a few more." So it's really interesting the answers because you notice Peter Ducey did not get a question. He's not in the original group of people that get an immediate question or whatever. So it's only once he closes his book that he actually gets a question from Ducey.
Sir. There are deep questions among Americans about the competence of government, from the messy rollout of 5G this week to the Afghanistan withdrawal to testing on COVID. What have you done to restore Americans' faith in the competence of government? And are you satisfied by the view of the competence of your government?
Look, let's take Afghanistan. I know you all would like to focus on that, which is legitimate. We were spending $1 trillion a week. I mean, $1 billion a week in Afghanistan for 20 years.
That's a big difference.
That's a huge difference.
It's
For
just
20
1,000
years?
of those billions or whatever, or how many is it? 10,000 of the billions? God, I forget now.
Potato.
For that.
Raise your hand if you think anyone was going to be able to unify Afghanistan under one single government. It's been the graveyard of empires.
All of our hands are
for
up, right?
solid
Well,
reasons.
you did. You did
It
that,
is not
Joe.
susceptible.
They unified the
to
way
unity.
you like to unify,
Number
by
one.
force.
So the question was,
They
do I
did.
continue to spend that much money per week in the state of Afghanistan, knowing that the idea that being able to succeed, other than sending more body bags back home, is highly, highly unusual. My dad used to have an expression. He'd say, "Son, if everything's equally important to you, nothing's important to you." There is no way to get out of Afghanistan after 20 years easily. Not possible, no matter when you did it.
Which is why we were in the
And
process
I
of
make
doing
no
it, and then
apologies
you
for what I did.
effed
I have a
everything
great concern for the
expression
women
is
and
that?
men who were
on
blown
purpose.
up on the line at the airport by a terrorist attack against them.
Because
But
you told them to
the
stand there.
military will acknowledge,
Your
and I
military,
think
your
you
State
will, who know a
Department,
lot about foreign policy,
and you knew damn well there
that
was
had we
bombs there.
stayed and I had not pulled those troops
Well,
out,
not him. He doesn't know what
we
the
would
hell's
be
going on.
asked to put
His
somewhere
State Department
between 20 and
the Department of
50,000 more
Defense.
troops back in. Because the only reason more Americans weren't being killed than others is because the last president signed an agreement to get out by May the 1st. And so everything was copacetic. Had we not gotten out, and the acknowledgement is we'd be putting a lot more forces in. Now, do I feel badly what's happening as a consequence of the incompetence of the Taliban? Yes, I do.
Yeah, it's our
But I feel
incompetence
badly
that
also
let them
about the
even
fistulas that are
succeed,
taking
and
place
our
in
helicopters
Eastern
and our
Congo.
Humvees and our
I feel
tanks and
badly
our
about a whole range of
weaponry and
things
our
around the
airports
world
and our everything.
that we can't
You
solve
gave
every
them the
problem.
infrastructure to
And
become
so
a
I don't
terroristic
view that as a competence
mini
issue.
empire in
The issue of whether or
Afghanistan.
not there's competence in terms of whether or not we're dealing with 5G or not, we don't deal with 5G. The fact is that you had two private enterprises, that had one promoting 5G and the other one are airlines. They're private enterprises. They have government regulation, admittedly. And so what I've done is pushed as hard as I can to have 5G folks hold up and abide by what was being requested by the airlines until they could more modernize over the years, so that 5G would not interfere with the potential of the landing. So any 5G tower within a certain number of miles from the airport should not be operative. And so I understand, but anything that happens that's consequential is viewed as the government's responsibility. I get that. Am I satisfied with the way in which we have dealt with COVID and all the things that go along with that? Yeah, I am satisfied. I think we've done remarkably well. You know, the idea that on testing we should have done it quicker, but we've done remarkable since then. What we have more testing going on than anywhere in the world, and we're going to continue to increase that. Did we have it at the moment exactly when we should have moved, and could we have moved a month earlier? Yeah, we could have. But with everything else that's going on, I don't view that as somehow a mark of incompetence. Look, think of what we did on COVID. When we were pushing on AstraZeneca to provide more vaccines, well, guess what? They didn't have the machinery to be able to do it. So I physically went to Michigan, stood there in a factory with the head of AstraZeneca, and said, "We'll provide the machinery for you. This is what we'll do. We'll help you do it so that you can produce this vaccine more rapidly."
And then we'll mandate
I think
it.
that's pretty hands-on stuff. We also said, right now, when people, the
force everybody to get it.
hospitalizations are overrunning hospitals, and you have docs and nurses out because of COVID, they have COVID. We
Or
put
because they
thousands
get
of
laid
people
off
back
because
in
they
those
didn't
hospitals. Look
get
at
jabbed.
all the military personnel we have there, first responders. Nobody has ever organized a strategic
Really?
operation to get as many shots in arms by opening clinics and being able to get so many people vaccinated. What I'm doing now is not just getting significant amounts of vaccines to the rest of the world, but they now need the mechanical way is how they get shots in arms. So we're providing them to know how to do that. Now, should everybody in America know that? No, they don't necessarily know that. They're just trying to figure out how to put three squares on the table and stay safe. But so I do think the place where I was a little disappointed, I wish we could have written it differently, is when we did the legislation to provide the funding for COVID and the money we provided for the states to be able to deal with keeping schools open. Some of them didn't do a very good job. Some are still holding the money. I don't have the authority to do anything about that. I think that's not particularly competent. There's things that could and should have been done. They could have moved faster. So I understand the frustration. You know, I remember, I think it was, I forget which cabinet member saying to Barack Obama where something was going on. And he said, well, you can be sure, Mr. President, of the millions of employees you have out there, somebody's screwing up right now. Somebody's screwing up. So, it's just but I think you have to look at things that we used to look at it on balance. What is the trajectory of the country? Is it moving in the right direction now? I don't know how we can say it's not. I understand the overwhelming frustration, fear, and concern with regard to inflation and COVID. I get it. But the idea, if I told you when we started, I tell you what I'm going to do. First year, I'm going to create over 6 million jobs. I'm going to get unemployment down to 3.9%. I'm going to generate, and I named it all. You'd look at me like you're nuts. Maybe I'm wrong.
President, at least in our recent memory, with as much Washington experience as you entered this office with, but yet after we sit here for more than an hour,
over half a century.
I'm not sure I've heard you say if you would do anything differently in the second year of your term. Do you plan to do anything differently?
Yeah, look, the thing I have to do.
Are you satisfied with your team here at the White House, sir?
I'm satisfied.
Yeah, I plan on stepping down and allowing, Kamala to take over.
Satisfied with the team. There's three things I'm.
Sorry, Susan, we're just joking. This guy is our legit president.
Most legitimate potato.
Now that I've
ever
gotten the critical crises out of the way in the sense of that knowing exactly where we're going. Number one, I'm going to get out of this place more often. I'm going to go out and talk to the public. I'm going to do
You're out of that place every freaking every day, every weekend.
What we've already done, why it's important, and what we'll do.
Your day shuts down at 3 o'clock.
Playing golf.
I want to do. Number two, I'm bringing in more and more now that I have time. I mean, literally, like you, I'm not complaining. It's 12, 14 hours a day, no complaints. I really mean it sincerely. But now that certain of the big chunks have been put in place and we know the direction, I'm also going to be out there seeking more advice of experts outside, from academia to editorial writers to think tanks, and I'm bringing them in, just like I did early on, bringing in presidential historians to get their perspective on what we should be doing, seeking more input, more information, more constructive criticism about what I should and shouldn't be doing. And the third thing that I'm going to be doing a lot more of is being in a situation where I'm able to bring, I'm going to be deeply involved in these off-year elections. We're going to be raising a lot of money. We're going to be out there making sure that we're helping all those candidates.
Not even Democrats want you associated with them.
Already asked me to come in and campaign with them, to go out and make the case in plain, simple language as to what it is we've done, what we want to do, and why we think it's important. How many more hours am I doing this? I'm happy to stick around.
Sure you are.
Only for another 50 minutes.
You always ask me the nicest questions. I know you do.
All right.
None of them make a lot of sense to me, but
Well, let's
fire away. Come on.
A new year.
That's not the question's fault.
Why are you trying so hard in your first year to pull the country so far to the left?
Well, I'm not. I don't know what you consider to be too far to the left. If in fact we're talking about making sure that we had the money for COVID.
You see the look on the lady that's doing the sign language or whatever when he says I'm not.
It's all expressions. It's all expressions, 100%. And 99% of the interpreter world, like sign language interpreting, whatever interpreting, they consider themselves defenders of the lowly, poor, lesser than. So they have a heightened sense of self-virtue and self-esteem. Is weird. Like when you talk to the people, they're extremely. A lot of them do a good job, but they're very they feel good about themselves. They're like nurses right now. Oh, I'm a nurse and I'm on the front lines. They've been in that mentality for the past 20 years. Self-aggrandizing, exactly. And so whenever they are extremely basically anybody who typically works in the disability industry, I hate to call it that, but that's what it is, right? It works in that industry, is very, very left wing and very extremely like victim mentality. It's crazy. So when you get people like that working in government, translating supposedly neutral parties, they are going to. It's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Because you get the left-wing people in there because of that mentality. They interpret and they filter everything political that the deaf people see is through that lens of these guys are the bad guys, these are the good guys. These are the bad guys, these are good guys. I'm gonna make a face when he's talking and not when he is, and back and forth. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Then the community becomes further left, and the deaf people themselves just assume that that's correct, and it just spirals into craziness. It's actually kind of crazy that, like, when you get into that world, how self-absorbed it is. It's kind of terrible. But
interesting.
My parents ran a deaf orphanage school and a church for deaf kids for quite a while.
That's very interesting.
Making sure we had the money to put together the bipartisan infrastructure, making sure we were able to provide for those things that, in fact, would significantly reduce the burden on working class people, but make them, they have to continue to work hard. I don't know how that is pointed to the left. If you may recall, you guys have been trying to convince me that I am Bernie Sanders. I'm not. I like him, but I'm not Bernie Sanders. I'm not a socialist. I'm a mainstream
Bernie Sanders
Democrat,
seems to think you are.
He says, I'm not a socialist.
Or at least in the
Oh,
past.
Bernie Sanders is a socialist. Great.
Sanders. I'm not a socialist. I'm a mainstream Democrat, and I have been. And mainstream Democrats have overwhelmed me. If you notice, the 48 of the 50 Democrats supported me in the Senate on virtually everything I've asked. Yes, sir.
Other than mentioning the Senate.
Whether or not you believed that we would have free and fair elections in 2022 if some of these state legislatures reformed their voting protocols. You said that it depends.
Who is this crackly voiced?
Do you think that
he got his pubes?
Is that you?
Is that who?
You're the only one that I haven't seen their face, so I'm just assuming it's you.
Well,
yeah. When are we gonna get that selfie action there? Come on, America
they
shirts.
would in any way be illegitimate?
Oh, yeah, I think it easily could be illegitimate. Imagine if, in fact, Trump has succeeded in convincing Pence to not count the votes. Imagine if...
Which happened
in regard to
under
2022,
Thomas
sir,
Jefferson.
2022, I mean...
Or else you wouldn't have a third
imagine if
president by the name of Thomas Jefferson. But
attempts
what
to
the
say
hell?
that the count was not legit. You have to recount it, or we're not going to count. We're going to discard the following votes. I mean, sure, I'm not saying it's going to be legit. It's the increase in the prospect of being illegitimate is a direct proportion to us not being able to get these reforms passed. But I don't think you're going to see,
centralized
you're not going to see
control of all
me,
of,
and I don't think you're going to
election
see the
processes
Democratic Party give up on
by the federal government
coming
itself.
back at assuming that the attempt fails today.
Basically legalizing fraud.
One more, sir. You know, you campaigned and you ran on a return to civility, and I know that you dispute the characterization that you called folks who would oppose those voting bills as being Bull
Oh no, it's more like. It's like it's already crackly and hard to understand, and then you put a pillow in front of your face.
You said that they would be sort of in
and
the,
you like
the same
suffocate
camp.
yourself with this.
No, I
Petri
didn't
dish,
say that. Look
base
what I
cipher.
said. Go back and read what I said and tell me if you think I called anyone who voted on the side of the position taken by Bull Connor that they were Bull Connor.
You did.
And that is an interesting reading of English. I assume you got into journalism because you like to write.
Oh, attacking journalists. No. Attacking journalists.
Oh my god. It's the end of the
Did you
fucking
expect that
planet.
would
Pardon
work
my
with
French.
Senators Manchin or Sinema?
No,
that
here's the
argument?
thing. There's certain things that are so consequential. You have to speak from your heart as well as your head.
Oh my god.
Just this guy.
Oh my god.
But we're not refuted that he is our president. He is our president of the United States of America.
I was
legitimate
speaking out
potato head.
forcefully on what I think to be at stake.
You're literally
That's
speaking
what it
forcefully
is.
now.
And by the way, no one forgets who was on the side of King or Bull Connor. No one doesn't.
It wasn't
the history
you.
books will note it.
Okay.
And when I was making the case, don't think this is a freebie. You don't get to vote this way and then somehow it goes away. This will stick with you the rest of your career and long after you're gone.
And Mr. President,
And folks, okay. Whoa. Hang on, guys. We've only gone an hour and 20 minutes. I'll keep going. But I'm going to go. Let me get something.
You have a
straight.
good night.
How long are you guys ready to go? You want to go for another hour or two? Okay. I'm going to go. I tell you what, folks. I'm going to go another 20 minutes till a quarter of. Okay? Yes,
you
sir.
see the time frame? There's another 40 minutes left.
President Biden on the.
I want to thank my communications staff for the great help here.
Well, President Biden on the coronavirus.
Literally everything he says is
tragically
like
approaching
thunderous
nearly
laughter.
1 million Americans
It's like you're
who
in North
died.
Korea with Kim Jong-un.
And I'd like to ask you
Kim Jong-un
why it
kicks a
is
can
during
over. It's
your
like,
3.5-hour virtual summit in November with the Chinese president, you didn't press for transparency, and also whether that has anything to do with your son's involvement in an investment firm controlled by Chinese state-owned entities.
The answer is that I did raise the question of transparency. I spent a lot of time with him. And the fact
Yeah,
is
you did
that
spend a
they're
lot of
just
time with
not-
Hunter.
they're just not being transparent.
Transparency on the coronavirus origins.
Yes.
And
there's a bank.
You did during
Yeah.
the virtual summit. Is there a reason your press staff was unaware of that? And what did you say to the Chinese president?
And they weren't with me the entire time. Look, I made it clear that I thought that China had an
out of
obligation
control, ticked
to be
off
more forthcoming on
dementia
exactly what
patient.
the source of the virus was
Get out.
and where it came from. Yes.
Mr. President, I would like to ask you about foreign policy. One of the first priority that you declared when you came to office was to end the war in Yemen, the catastrophic war.
Look at the way
in
he's
Yemen.
holding the mic. by the
You
way,
appointed
too.
a
That's just
special
like,
envoy. Today, one
hell?
of your allies, United Arab Emirates, is asking your administration to put back the Houthi rebels or militias back on the terror list. Are you going to do that? And how are you going to end the war in Yemen, sir?
The answer is it's under consideration, and ending the war in Yemen takes the two parties to be involved to do it, and it's going to be very difficult. Yes.
Thank you very much for this honor. James Rosen with Newsmax. I'd like to raise a delicate subject, but with utmost respect for your life accomplishment, my office you hold.
Oh, God.
A poll released this morning by Politico Morning Consult found 49% of registered voters
This is Fox News
disagreeing
light.
with the statement, Joe Biden is mentally fit. Not even a majority of Democrats who responded strongly affirmed that statement.
Well, I'll let you all make the judgment whether they're correct.
Well,
Thank
so
you.
the question I have for you, sir, if you'd let me finish, is why do you suppose such large segments of the American electorate have come to harbor such profound concerns about your cognitive fitness? Thank you.
I have no idea. Yes, sir.
There's
Mr.
plenty
President.
of people that meme that one.
I wanted to sort of address or ask about a tension that's sort of been in this press conference on unifying the country, because you campaigned on two things. One of them is being able to accomplish big things, and the other is the ability to unify the country. And even today, you've talked about sort of a different posture
Let's
with
debate
Republicans. And
authoritarianism.
I wonder if you still think it's
centralized
possible to do
government
both
in that
of those
kind of
things.
way. But you know, hey,
We have to. We have to. I mean, as long as I hold public office, I'm going to continue to attempt to do both things.
More follow-up. Around this time last year when you were campaigning in Georgia,
What a
I think one of the
question.
things you told people was the power is literally in your hands. You know, if voters give Democrats the House and the Senate and the presidency, that all these big things can get accomplished. And, you know, we've seen stalemate, we've seen things being stymied. Why should folks believe you this time around?
Can you think of any other president
shouldn't.
who's done as much in 1 year? Name one for me.
I'm asking you.
via executive
serious.
order.
What was the question?
Can you imagine any president that's gotten as much done as we have in 1 year? And my response was, "Oh
says
yeah,
no.
via executive order."
You guys talk
But
about
yeah.
how nothing's happened. I don't think there's been much on any incoming president's plate that's been a bigger
Executive
menu
fiat.
than the plate I had given to me. I'm not complaining. Knew that running in. And the fact of the matter is we got an awful lot done. An awful lot done. And there's more to get done. But look,
More to destroy
let me ask you a rhetorical
purposefully
question.
for your globalist
No, I won't.
corporate leaders.
Thank you. Yes. Be
Deep
careful.
state
Don't get hurt,
and
man.
so
No,
forth.
I'm going to take care. Mr. President, thank you. Sebastian Smith from AFP. Another question on Ukraine. Ukraine borders 4 NATO member countries. How concerned are you concerned that a real conflagration in Ukraine, if the Russians really go in there, that it could suck in NATO countries that are on the border and you end up with an actual NATO-Russia confrontation of some kind? And secondly, are you entertaining the thought of a summit with Vladimir Putin as a way to perhaps try and put this whole thing to bed, address their concerns, and negotiate a way out of this?
The last part, the last question, yes. When we talked about whether or not we'd pick the 3 meetings we talked about, and we talked about we would go from there if there was reason to go to a summit. We talked about a summit as being before the Ukraine item came up in terms of strategic doctrine and what the strategic relationship would be. So I still think that is a possibility, number one. Number two, I am very concerned. I'm very concerned that this could end up being, look, the only war that's worse than one that's intended is one that's unintended. And what I'm concerned about is this could get out of hand, very easily get out of hand.
I
because,
wonder
like you
why
said,
you just keep
the
hurling
borders
insults all day.
of Ukraine and what Russia may or may not do. I am hoping that Vladimir Putin understands that he is short of a full-blown nuclear war. He's not in a very good position to dominate the world. And so I don't think he thinks that. But it is a concern. And that's why we have to be very careful about how we move forward and make it clear to him that there are prices to pay that could, in fact, cost his country an awful lot. But of course, you have to be concerned when you have, nuclear power invaded. If he invades, it hasn't happened since World War II. This has been the most consequential thing that's happened in the world in terms of war and peace since World War II. Yes.
Nearly 2 years have passed since the beginning of the global coronavirus outbreak, and you again today acknowledge that Americans are frustrated and they're tired. Based on your conversations with your health advisors, what type of restrictions do you imagine being on Americans this time next year, and what does the new normal look like for social gatherings and travel to you?
Well, we'll have to look
Well,
like what
the
we'll have to
answer
look
is
at contact tracing
I hope
looks like
the
in
new
the new
normal
world
will be
order.
that we don't still have 30-some million people not vaccinated. I hope the new normal is people have seen and what their own interest is and have taken advantage of what we have available to us. Number two, with the pill that is a problem that appears to be as efficacious as it seems to be, that
Oh my
you're going to
God.
be able to deal with this virus in a way that after the fact you have an ability to make sure you don't get very sick. Number three,
All from
I
these
would hope
mega
that
corporations.
what happens is the rest of the world does what I'm doing and provides significant amounts of the vaccine to the rest of the world, because it's not sufficient that we just have this country
India's not doing
not
it.
have the
Countries in
virus
Africa
or
aren't
be
doing
able
it.
to control the virus, but that we
Countries
can't
in
build a wall
Central
high enough
America
to
and
keep
some
a
in
new
South
variant
America aren't
out.
doing it.
So it requires one of the things that I
And they
want to
seem to be
do,
fine.
and we're contemplating figuring out how to do.
Susan, we're not disputing the fact that people should actually go and see their doctors and do what's best for them when it comes down to COVID.
Contemplating how to get done, and that is how do we move in a direction where the world itself is vaccinated. It's not enough just to vaccinate 340 million, fully
Jab
vaccinated
the whole
340 million
planet.
people in the United
Stabbies
States.
for everyone.
That's not enough. It's not enough to do it. We have to do it, and we have to do a lot more than we're doing now.
Do it.
And that's why we have continued to keep the commitment of providing vaccines and available cures for the rest of the world as well.
If I could, sir, and I should have said this before, Francesca Chambers McClatchy, how do you plan to win back moderates and independents who cast a ballot for you in 2020, but polls indicate aren't happy with the way you're doing your job now?
I don't believe the polls.
Oh, really?
Well, why don't you just go down the road?
Thank you, Mr. President. To follow up on some of the questions about the vaccination program, you've given dozens of speeches this year urging Americans to get vaccinated. You've talked to reluctant Republicans. You've said it's people's patriotic duty. There have been very few mentions of the fact that young children under the age of 5, still in the third year of this pandemic in this country, don't have access to the vaccine. Can you speak to frustrated parents a little bit about why that continues to be the case and when that might change?
Because the science hasn't reached the point where they're convinced that, in fact, it is safe.
You notice
So
he
that's
keeps
what
on
they're doing
looking
now.
at his watch.
You could have asked me that. I got asked that question about 3 months ago about people between the ages of 7 and 12. Well, they've got to the point where they felt secure in the number of tests they had done and the tests they had run that it was
Oh
safe.
my God.
So it will come. It will come. But I'm not a scientist. I can't tell you when, but it is really very important that we get down to that next piece.
One more follow-up on Build Back Better. When you said it's going to likely be broken up into chunks, you mentioned that the climate pieces seem to have broad support. You mentioned that Senator Manchin is a supporter of early child care. You left out the child tax credit, and I wonder if it's fair to read between the lines and assume that that is a piece, given Senator Manchin's opposition to it, that the extension of that is likely one of those components that may have to wait until sometime down the
There's
line.
two really big components that I feel strongly about that I'm not sure I can get in the package. One is the child care tax credit, and the other is help for cost of community colleges. They are massive things that I've run on, I care a great deal about, and I'm going to keep coming back at whatever floor I get to be able to try to get chunks or all of that done. Yes, sir. Next man next to you, left.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Pedro Rojas. I'm with Univision National News. This
Of
is
course
actually
you
my
are.
first press conference here. It's good to meet you in person.
We always have long press conferences.
Awesome. I got a couple of questions for
Really?
you. Number one, you said
They're
that you
always
want to
long.
convey your message by
Always.
getting
Always
out there in the country. I wonder if you're planning on
Always.
traveling also to South America and other
Never been
countries
sure.
in the Western Hemisphere, given the fact that China has gained a lot of influence in the region. And the
Because
second
he's had
question
so
is,
many press conferences, right?
what would be your message for residents in this country that are struggling every time they go to the gas station, every time they go to the grocery store and see the prices going high, and the pharmacy? I happen to come from South Texas, where I saw a lot of people struggling financially in the last few months, and so I wonder what is the message you want to spread to them.
Well, I try to express, I tried to answer that 7 different ways today about how to deal with inflation. But let me answer the first question. I spent a lot of time in South America and in Latin America. When I was vice president, I spent the bulk of my 8 years basically in Europe and or in Latin America. I'm in contact with the leaders of the
No,
countries
you weren't.
in
You were
South America.
naked in a
We're working
pool.
closely with making sure that we do everything, for example, with the to deal with helping
Trying to flirt with
countries in question,
Secret
particularly
Service
those
agents.
in Central America, to be able to help them with their ability to deal with the
And other people.
People don't sit around in Guatemala and say, "I got a great idea. Let's sell everything we have, give the money to a coyote, take us across a terribly dangerous trip up through Central America and up through Mexico and sneak us across the border, drop us in the desert. Won't that be fun?" People leave.
They
because
literally
have-
do that.
Right.
They
Exactly.
literally do that. They give their kids to people who tell them, "Oh yes, we're lovely individuals. We just want your kid to have a better life," and they're freaking coyotes, or
no
coyotes as they
problems.
call them.
And one of the things I've done when I was a vice president, got support with, although I don't have much Republican support anymore, is provide billions of dollars to be able to say to those countries, why are people leaving and how are you going to reform your own system? And that's we've worked on a long time. It still needs a lot more work, and we're focusing on that. I also believe I've spent a lot of time talking about and dealing with policy having to do with Maduro, who is a little more than a dictator right now, and the same thing in Chile and not the same thing, but with Chile as well as Argentina. So look, I made a speech a while ago when I was vice president, saying that
El Presidente.
if we were smart, we have an opportunity
Yeah.
to make the Western Hemisphere a democratic hemisphere.
No,
And
united.
we
Oh,
were
it's
moving in the
slipped.
right direction under the last administration, the Obama-Biden administration. But so much damage was
Borderless
done
hemisphere,
as a consequence of the
as
foreign policy
Hillary
decisions
Rodham
the last
Clinton liked to
president
call it.
made in Latin America, Central America, and South America, that we now have, when I call for a summit of the democracies, I call that a number of nations showed up for this summit of democracy. What is it that's going to allow us to generate? We've actually had a reduction in the number of democracies in the world. And it seems to me there's nothing more important.
I wonder
used to
why,
talk
because you were
about,
literally debating
when I was a
that
kid in college, about America's
earlier
backyard.
today and then earlier last year.
Everything south of the Mexican border is America's.
Joe, we can't hear you. You stepped away from your mic.
We don't dictate what happens in any other part of this continent or the South America.
Joe Biden,
We have to
wake
work
up.
very hard on it. But the trouble is, we're having great difficulty making up for the mistakes that have been made the last 4 years, and it's going to take some time. Yes, gentleman in the back, and then I'll go to this side. Okay.
Oh, there's the
Thank you, Mr.
dumbass
President.
Again,
Alexander
looked at his
Nazarian,
watch.
Yahoo News. And thank you for holding
Yeah.
this press conference. I hope there's more of them.
I
Anytime
hope
you have
there's
extra
more
3
of them.
hours, you can do it.
That's
We'll stay for a couple more. You said you were surprised by Republican obstruction of your agenda, but didn't the GOP take exactly the same tactic when you were vice president to Barack Obama? So why did you think they would treat you any differently than they treated him?
First of all, they weren't nearly as obstructionist as they are now, number one. They stated that, but you had a number of Republicans we worked with closely. From John McCain, a number of Republicans we worked closely with.
Through John McCain.
Even back in those days,
Another
Lindsey Graham.
Freudian slip.
And so the difference here is
Through him, yes.
there seems to
through John
be
McCain,
a
we worked.
desire to work with them. And I didn't say my agenda. I'm saying, what are they for? What is their
So what
agenda?
happens in dementia, you
They had an
lose
agenda
that ability to
back
control
in the
that which
administration
is secret.
when the 8 years
That's
we
just
were
like
president and
just
vice
comes
president.
out.
But I don't know what their agenda is now. What is it? The American public is outraged about the tax structure we have in America. What are they proposing to do about it? Anything? Have you heard anything? I mean, anything. I haven't heard anything.
Have you?
The American public is outraged about the fact that we're the state of the environment. The vast majority of the public. What have they done to do anything to ameliorate?
No, they're not.
The climate change that's occurring, other than to deny it exists. So what I'm saying is the difference between then and now is not only the announcement that was made, anything to stop Barack Obama. I get that part. But what eventually happened, we were able to get some things done. We were able to work through some things. On the stuff that was really consequential in terms of ideologically divisive, it was a real fight. But I don't think there's a time when I wonder what would be the Republican platform right now. What do you think? What do you think their position on taxes are?
Get rid of
What do you
them.
think their position on human rights is? What do you think their position
Everyone's
is on
equal.
whether or not we should
Human rights?
what we should do
How
about
about
the
not
cost of prescription
mandating people to show their papers
What do you
everywhere they
think?
go?
I mean, I honest to God don't know what they're for. Yet
But then
I
do
know a
away
lot of
with
these senators
voter ID,
and congressmen,
because, you know,
and I know they do have
that's
things they want us
racist.
to, whether there's things I want or not.
And this is just total
But you don't hear much
Biden
about
projecting
And every once in
the
a while,
Democrat
when you hear
Party
something where there's a
and their faults
consensus,
onto the Republicans.
it's important,
It's
but
the
a small
exact same
item,
arguments you
and
hear
it
on the
doesn't
6
get
o'clock
much
news at
coverage.
Fox News about
Where it
like
occurs.
the Democrats
I'm not
don't have
being
anything to
coverage. I mean,
stand
there's not
on.
much discussion
They
about
don't have a message. They don't
So
have
I just
anything like
think it's a
that.
different.
And this is what they've been doing. They've been talking like this forever about the Democrats, and so now he's just
matter
flipping that back
how
around those
strongly
exact same words.
one supports as a Republican and/or supports the president, the former president of the United States. I don't know how we can't look at what happened on January 6th and think that's a problem.
Pause this for a second.
One more question, Mr.
I was just listening to Viva and Barnes's thing with their little Today Show earlier today, and they were talking about a group that was called the Weather Underground, where they set off literal bombs in the Capitol and then shot congressmen in the Capitol with freaking guns. And then there was shootings outside the Capitol, around the Capitol, in the District of Columbia. I mean, like, we're talking holy terror. But, a couple people walking through the, velvet ropes. Oh my God. And a couple of people, it's not a couple of people, there's a lot of people, but, still.
Sure.
There wasn't any bombs that went off. There was no rooms that got destroyed. There was no congressmen and women that were shot. Police officers weren't, being shot at. There wasn't like a shootout. There wasn't like all this crazy shit with Weather Underground people going after the Capitol and federal police and so forth. And, I mean, hell, they went after everybody. They bombed literally everything back in like the, 60s, early 70s type era. I mean, holy freaking shit. And like, oh my God, it's the worst day ever. It's like 9/11. It's like, well, what about your lefty Weather Underground people? I mean, that's who they were. These are the people that Bill Clinton lets out, Obama let out. He pardons them. Bill Clinton pardoned these people. Obama pardoned these people. And even freaking Andrew Cuomo, when he left office, he pardoned some people that were cop killers that were part of the Weather Underground. And he let them out before he left. He pardoned them before he left office and before he resigned. So, I mean, it's like, really? You all are what's called fucking lawyers. Liars. Anyway.
Mr. President,
By the way, it's a quarter of, guys, now, so I'm going to do this. If you answer me easy questions, I'll give you quick answers.
There's an increasing concern, I think, among some Democrats that even if schools do continue to open, and I get that most of them are now open, Republicans will weaponize this narrative of you and other leading Democrats, allowing them to stay closed in the midterms next year. And obviously that issue has a lot of traction with suburban parents, as I think
What
we
do you
saw
mean
in
allow?
Virginia.
I'm confused by the question. I'm sorry.
Well, that could school reopenings or closures become a potent midterm issue for Republicans to win back the suburbs?
Why is this a question?
Oh, I think it could be, but I hope
This is like a backroom DNC meeting, like
Look,
what's going to affect us in our running for office. This is
maybe
supposed
I'm
to be a
kidding
journalist.
myself. But as time goes
Totally
on,
not a Democrat hack.
the voter who is just trying to figure out, as I said, how to take care of their family, put 3 squares on the table, stay safe, be able to pay their mortgage or their rent.
3 squares?
3 square
is
meals.
becoming much more informed on the
I mean, this is Joe Biden we're talking about here. What
the
does he mean by
motives
square?
some of the political players
One has to ask
and
the
some of the political parties. And I
Oh my
think that
God.
they are not going to be
His
as susceptible
responses.
to believing
Or lack thereof.
some of the outlandish things that have been said and continue to be said. You know, every president, not necessarily in the first 12 months, but every president the first couple of years, every president, of the last presidents, at least 4 of them, have had polling numbers that are 44% favorable. So it's this idea that
Yours
but you
are
all-
in
not
the
you all, but
mid-30s.
Now it is, well, Biden's at one poll showed him at 33%. The average is 44, 45%. One poll him at 49%. I mean,
Which
the
one polls
idea
you at
that,
49%? Did they walk in the White House and get your name to put a
American
check mark
public
on
are
your
trying
name,
to
you and Jill?
sift their way through
A million
what's
times
real and
in a
what's
poll?
fake. And I don't think I've never seen a time when
We have a potato in office.
the political coverage, the choice.
Don't
of what
don't make
political
your brain
coverage
explode,
the voter
Joe.
looks to
Don't
has
think
as
too
much
much.
impact on as what they believe. They go to get reinforced in their views, whether it's MSNBC or whether it's Fox or whatever. I mean, and one of the things I find fascinating that's happening, and you all are dealing with it every day, and it will impact on how things move, is that a lot of the speculation in the polling data shows that the cables are heading south. They're losing viewership. No, Fox is okay for a while, but it's not gaining. And a lot of the rest are predicted to be not very much in the mix in the next 4 to 5 years. I don't know whether that's true or not, but I do know that we have sort of put themselves in certain alleys.
Don't talk about CNN.
And they've decided that, you know, how many people who watch MSNBC also
you
watch
have had
Fox,
more
and you're a
viewers
politician trying to find out what's going on in both places.
in all of the time
How many people
that you've been doing
again,
things, Koolfrog,
I'm
than
no
CNN
expert in
has
any of
had
this,
in
but
the past,
fact
like,
is,
I don't know,
I
month.
think you have to
It's
acknowledge
good to know.
that what gets covered now is necessarily a little bit different.
I mean, I'm
than
not a
what gets
doctor, but I
covered
mean, you
in the
know, I
past.
think
I've
I
had a
can
couple-
probably say that. I'm not an orc doctor
Right.
like the
But the
orc lady
nature-
is on CNN.
See, you notice he picked up his books and he's like holding on to them super tight. What happened?
Yes.
Not
Body language much?
the nature of the way things get covered has, in my observation over the years I've been involved in public life, changed. And it's changed because of everything from a thing called the internet. It's changed because of the way in which we have self-identified perspectives based on what channel you turn on. What
You notice I
network you
just
look
put
at.
it at 125.
Yes, and all of a sudden it sounds
And
normal.
it's never quite been like that. Anyway.
Sounds like a normal person speaking somewhat.
On behalf of the Correspondents Association, thank you very much
Then I'll go to you.
for standing for our questions. We hope the public has found it as enlightening as those of us in the room.
Oh
have. I
my
wanna ask
God,
you,
it's
sir,
Ben
about
Shapiro
one of the
again.
I mean, I
overriding.
can still stand. It's
How
amazing.
many times
We
is
appreciate
this
it. We
bastard
very
gonna-
much do. So the
What
question
the
I want to ask
hell
you
is he
accountability,
doing?
sir, on one of the top public concerns, of course.
He's like, you can notice I can still stand, and then he goes and he kind of like
as those of us in the room.
jumps
have.
up
I
and
want to ask you,
down.
sir, about one of the
I mean, I
overriding.
can still stand. It's amazing.
We appreciate it. We very much do. So the
Oh
question I want
my
to ask you gets to
God.
accountability, sir. on one of the top public
Watch
concerns,
him,
of course, which is
fall
the
on his face
coronavirus
one
and the,
time when he
the
does that,
government's
like,
response
break
to
his
it. Whether
nose.
it's confusion over what style of mask to wear, when to test,
Like,
how to
Jill,
test,
the
where to
facial
test.
surgery.
The public is
It
confused,
wore
sir, and you
off.
see that in the drop-off in the polling on this question. Why did you tell Jeff that you were satisfied with your team? Why are you not willing to make or interested in making any changes, either at the CDC or other agencies, given the fact that the messages have been so confusing?
Oh my
Well,
God,
first of
this has
all,
totally been
the
true.
message is to the
Give him a
extent they've been
yarlic cut,
confusing
he's
is
been
because the
true.
scientists, they're learning more.
Look at
They're
that.
learning
Look at
more
those
about what's
eyes
needed
in
and
that
what's not
face.
needed. And so the fact is that the one piece that has gotten a lot of attention is the communications capacity of the CDC. Well, she came along and said, look, I'm a scientist and I'm learning. I'm learning how to deal with stating what
He's
is
a
the case
scientist
that we've
now.
observed. But look, I think that it's a little bit like saying when we went through the whole issue of how to deal with polio and the polio shot.
Fauci probably told him
What
that.
was said in the beginning.
He's cracking up
so,
laughing
well,
now.
It's changed a little bit. We moved this way or that way.
He's
When
like,
we dealt
Joe,
with
you're a
anything
scientist
else.
now.
As this was a brand new virus, a brand new phenomenon. Some of it was
Brand
deadly,
new.
other was more communicable.
Since
This is
1999.
This is
What?
an unfolding story. It's the nature of the way diseases spread. We're going to learn about it in a lot of other areas, not just COVID-19. And so I think,
Visit
you
my
know,
Rumble
I
channel
look
for a
at it
little
this
bit
way.
of that.
Think about how astounding it was within the time frame that it took to be able to come up with a vaccine. You used to write about that. Pretty amazing how rapidly they came up with a vaccine. It saved hundreds of thousands of lives. Did everything get right? No. And by the way, the idea whether we, anyway, I'm talking too much.
Thank you, Mr.
Yes,
President.
ma'am.
I have two really simple questions. I promise. You campaigned on canceling $10,000 in student loans.
Oh my
You still
God,
plan to do
it's
so,
this
and when?
bitch.
And then my second question is, now that you've clarified the
God,
Bull Connor
she's
comments,
so
do you plan to
agonizing.
reach out to Republicans like Mitt Romney to talk about reforming the Electoral Count Act?
Yes, I'm happy to speak out. I've met with Rip. I've talked to Mitt on other occasions. And by the way, I reached out to the minority leader as well at the time
Yes, they
they
love
made a
Mitt.
speech.
They
And
love
so,
Mitt Romney. So
I
do
have
all
no
the Mormons.
reluctance
They all love.
to reach out to any
They
Republican
all love themselves. Some Mitt
and
Romney.
anyone who, and I've made it clear. Look, I've now
He
had
spent
the
all of
opportunity
2
to travel
seconds in Utah, and they all
because
just
of
lined up.
funerals and eulogies I've made and attended, and congressmen and senators have come along with me. Don't hold me to the number, but somewhere between 20 and 25
Definitely not a
senators
cult,
and
ladies and
congresspersons
gentlemen.
have traveled with me. And I find you should get the list of them and ask I set for the 2, 3, 4, 5 hours that we've flown together, sit back in that conference table and talk to them. Ask them questions. They ask me questions. I learn a heck of a lot. But as president, you don't quite have that ability to do that as often as I'd like to be able to do it. And one of the things that I do think that has been made clear to me, speaking of polling, is the public doesn't want me to be the president's senator. They want me to be the president and let senators be senators. And so if I've
You
made,
often
I've made many
confuse
mistakes, I'm
your
sure.
senator-
If
your
I've made a
presidency
mistake,
with your
I'm used to
senatorship
negotiating
there,
to get
Joe.
things done,
So-
and I've been, in the past, relatively successful at it in the United States
Not that he doesn't confuse who's actually the president.
Senate, even as vice president.
We're not refuting that he's the president of the United States.
No,
We're
he
just
is.
making- He is the president of the United States.
I think that role
I was
is
running
a
for
different role.
Senate,
Folks,
while
it
I'm
is
here running for
now,
Senate,
almost 6. With all
Oh,
due
hey.
respect, I'm going to see you next conference. Okay, thank you.
Look at the way he walks too, by the way. I mean, it's like every single movement is so deliberate. It's like it's painful.
So you notice that
You can just hear the creaking.
They
every
let
time
the
he
clock
moves.
go for another 20 some odd minutes before they actually, go away. So
Go away
for
now.
whatever reason,
That's all for today. Go away now.
let's stop sharing that for now. And let's go this way. Yeah, it's just you and me.
It
I think it's
is.
been for the last how long? Jimmy kind of dropped out and after a phone call or whatever and never come back. So
He never come back. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah.
being that it's just you and me, everybody that's out there that is watching, paying attention to this or whatever, listening to what's going on, be sure to check out Grim's Bar and Bourbon. It's a Jimmy YouTube. Their links are down below in the description. You want to go and show yourself out?
Why, sure thing, if anybody's still around after that agonizing show of shit, or as some people call it, formerly a shit show. You can go to americashirtsaretfirst.com. That's americashirtsaretfirst.com. The most based t-shirts on the planet. And you can get 15% off any shirt in that store by using the discount code Koolfrogg. So go grab yourself a shirt, and as they say to Joe Biden, wake up. Wake up those
Wake up.
those lefties. Wake up those
Wake
people.
up.
Wake them the hell up. Wake up
So-
your family, friends, anybody. Anybody that sees you with that shirt, you can red pill them.
And I
start a
am
conversation.
Koolfrogg. You can go ahead and you can follow me almost anywhere at Koolfrogg. Go down below and check out the Linktree / Koolfrogg. That's KOOLFROGG. If you'd like to support me immediately, you can go to buymeacoffee.com /Koolfrogg and show your love. You help me, I'll buy a shirt from Shirts, help him, and he'll come back and
Ooh, I get to
we'll
feel
just
some of
make
this
some money. We're
love,
just gonna make
too.
some money, together, and we're gonna actually, hopefully, something will actually come with something eventually here. Thank you. Have a wonderful night. Say goodbye, everybody.
Later, peeps.
Later.